Today's story begins with a beautiful girl who thought so. Straighten her wig to better hide her hair, carefully apply false eyelashes, and perfect. This is how our heroine made herself the guest whom no one wants to see at the celebration. She, Miranda Avena, is going to completely ruin one wedding celebration today. Fruit Guild, a first-class guild that accepts secret orders and fulfills client requests. Being the trump card of the guild, she is engaged in acting as a guest, pretending to be a lover, and returning goods. Although this work is not an easy one, the costumes, makeup, and her acting skills have never let her down, and the current task is exactly in her line. Miranda, Lewis, the master of the Fruit Guild, turned to her. He had some business that would be ideal for her and asked what she thought. Chewing chocolate, she asked with interest. And what kind of business this was. The young man asked if she knew Duke Bentley Winter. The master explained that Duke Bentley Winter is the head of the authoritative ducal solid family. Power, money, appearance, everything about him is impeccable. But he is also known for not looking at women at all. But she heard that social circles had recently been alarmed by the news about the Duke's imminent marriage, so she was well aware. But this time she will need to disrupt the wedding of Duke Bentley Winter, and at the same time trample on his reputation, and asked what she would say. The job is right for her. Miranda asked if they only accepted orders that did not have harmful consequences, but Lewis said that they would get a good coin. The girl gave her master a suspicious look. She already thought that there would be some kind of intrigue, and reminded him that he had missed something important. Frowning her eyebrows, Miranda asked how much they were promised for this order. Having caught the train of thought of her employee, Lewis replied, "1,000,000 gold." The next moment, the order was happily accepted, and the friends shook hands, because no matter what it was, it would be successfully completed. The girl told the coachman to wait for her. She would soon return and pay 4 times more. Such a wife lured the man, and he willingly agreed to the conditions. Now Miranda had the opportunity to escape. Now she needs to get to the wedding palace, although it seems that everything has already begun. She examined the room from the inside, which was to be expected from the wedding of a member of the Solid family. The palace was simply huge. She heard that there should be security at the post, but for some reason there was no one. And she also did not observe the one who should check the invitations. Everything was so simple that it even infuriated her. She had to discard useless thoughts. If she can fulfill this order, then with the reward for it, she will finally be able to open her own cafe. And what difference did it make who her opponent was? Whether he was the Duke or someone else, she would do all the work and immediately run away from here. For the sake of her dream, she will disrupt this wedding at any cost, and opening the doors to the ceremony hall, she shouted that this marriage cannot be concluded. The people present in the hall began to shout, not understanding what kind of girl she was. The Duke's bride also asked the groom what was happening here, and whether the gentleman knew this girl. And while the man was silently in a state of shock, Miranda fell to the floor, and, crying, said that she was carrying the Duke's child, and thought that now she needed to cry more tragically. She said that he left her and decided to get married to another woman. She, whining, asked how he could do this to her. The people watched with interest what was happening. Miranda tearfully asked if he had really forgotten about that passionate night the ladies admired such speeches while the Duke walked towards her. Everything was fine. She did everything to ruin this wedding, and now it's time to run. Wiping her tears with a handkerchief, she said that he was not even interested in how she and the baby would live now. But having risen to her feet, she was about to run, but Duke Bentley Winter had already come close to her. It was the first time the girl had seen him so close. He looked very cold-blooded and very handsome. "Hey!" he suddenly called out to the pink-haired girl. She was scared. People were looking at what was happening like a movie, when he, the Duke, grabbed her by the waist. He held Miranda close and smilingly asked Darling why she had arrived so late, holding a strand of her wig. Duke Winter said with tenderness that he had been waiting for his very long time. He especially emphasized this word, baby. The girl went cold. She didn't understand what he was talking about. How dear he was, how he was his own, and in the sense of waiting for her, and why, after all, they were seeing each other for the first time. The man licked his lips with a grin. His girl must have been very scared and told her not to even dare run away. Miranda was terrified. And while she was wondering why everything turned out this way, Duke Bentley easily took her in his arms and said that now they had to go. The girl no longer knew what to do or where to put herself. Her thoughts were so confused that they led her to being carried to the basement, and her hands began to tremble. As that duke's bride screamed in horror at the gentleman to stop, she asked what about their wedding. "Hush," said Duke Bentley Winter, grinning. "There is no need to scare his unborn child." Smiling, he turned to Miranda and good-naturedly said that there was no need to scare his baby either. The worker Fruita cowered. The child, the baby, the girl who was supposed to get married today froze in place from such injustice and a disrupted wedding. The green-eyed heroine understood that an order for $1,000,000 gold would not be easy, but no one told her that Bentley Winter was going crazy. Folding his arms across his chest as they left the building, the Duke told the darling that he thought they had a lot to discuss. He then suggested starting with a discussion of that hot night. Damn it, Miranda thought, mentally clutching her head. Looking away, she thought about what she should do. She could use a teleportation spell, since she could be caught at any moment. But now standing directly opposite her is Bentley Winter Solid himself, the head of the Solid family and the only lord of the magic tower in the country. In other words, he is the greatest sorcerer who is very competent in magic. If she gets caught using magic, she will be expelled from the guild or something worse will happen, so she can only wait for the right moment. When suddenly the man took the lady's chin and lifted it, he asked why she, his dear, was avoiding eye contact with him. Wow, Miranda thought, looking in fascination at the man whose marriage she had just ruined. She thought what this psycho just said, and why is he so handsome she couldn't even concentrate. Squinting, they looked straight into each other's eyes. She thought that now this look meant, don't even think about joking with me. She pressed her lips. She had no other choice. Nothing would stop her. We'll see which of them will laugh last, she thought. And asking for forgiveness, Miranda said that she would like to talk in a quieter place and asked the sweetie how he looked at it. Seducing the man, she pressed his hand to her cheek, and not only the actions, but also the words struck Bentley so much that he shuddered. The green-eyed girl realized that now was the time, and starting to use magic, she shouted teleport. The next moment, a ray of light transported her to the Fruit Guild building, and she tremblingly fell, exhausted, to the floor. The girl lay unconscious on the floor. Her mascara was running from tears. Her lipstick had also been erased during the ceremony, and her wig had just fallen off. Louis tried to bring her to her senses. At the same time, the Duke looked in surprise at the hand and the emptiness in front of him, and said out loud that he did not think that she would leave like that. A very interesting bride flew to him. When suddenly the bride ran out of the ceremony hall, she, with resentment in her voice and trembling, called the gentleman and asked if he understood what he was doing and where that girl was. The man turned around sharply and said that she had left. It seemed that something had happened. The bride said that it seemed to her that he did not fully understand what was happening. When the Duke suddenly asked in an angry tone whether she thought she had the right to intimidate him, the lady shuddered. She wanted to justify herself, but she could not cope with the cold and gloomy gaze of the Lord of the Magic Tower. In a trembling voice, she asked what he meant. Her hand trembled, and the Duke said that at the Marquis's party, someone slipped a love potion into his wine. How fearless. That night, the girl frantically, with a frantic look and in a hurry, unbuttoned Lord Winter's shirt and shuddered, swearing. Why already? She exclaimed displeasedly, because she had definitely added the prescribed amount of the drug and was trying to justify herself to the gentleman who was looking at her with displeasure. Smirking, Bentley asked if that meant he had been overly lenient with her that day. But he agreed to the wedding, the lady cried out. He agreed, the Duke explained, but marrying her is a different story. Besides, even if this girl had not appeared, Winter spoke coldly in her ear. He would only be so tolerant of her until the ceremony. He advised her to better disappear before anyone found out what she had done. The girl froze in horror in place. And while that tactless lady continued to rage, Lord Winter thought how noisy it was here, and maybe he should meet his baby. When suddenly Miranda opened her green eyes, hearing the conversations, and just as quickly stood up, Louis asked if she had woken up. "Oh, Louis," she greeted her friend in surprise and asked if she had returned successfully. The guy answered yes, just gorgeous, and the mission was accomplished. The newspapers were already full of news about the dissolution of the Duke's engagement. The girl stretched and said that the most interesting thing he had was his pretty face, and asked what all the fuss was about. Lewis said that everyone was probably interested in the girl who burst into the celebration, and not in the Duke, and handed his friend the newspaper. Laughing, the yellow-haired guy said that they even put it on the main page. God, Miranda said. They even managed to take a photo. She had read that it was believed that Duke Bentley Winter had a child and a woman nicknamed Baby, which he had diligently hidden and had been the center of attention ever since. The article came out great, the brunette said, so they will end there. But instantly, her eyes widened when she saw the next article, in which the Duke was looking for her, offering a reward. Humming the melody, Miranda happily walked along the night street and thought how good it was. Why didn't she know before how pleasant the night could be? She believed that this was because she did not have that kind of money before, because the key to optimism is a thick wallet. Money is the best treatment. Miranda thought that this money would be enough to open a small cafe, and tomorrow she would go to look at a place for her future business, and wondered if nothing would happen. Thanks to her excellent acting, she successfully completed the assignment, for which she received a fabulous reward and certainly completed it. Only this crazy guy hadn't just ruined everything, and clutching the bag of money, she wondered what he was even doing, looking for a person like that. People should live a good life. From now on, she no longer accepts requests related to the wedding. It was not enough to run into someone else's hatred. Be that as it may, from tomorrow the difficulties will end, and a happy life will begin. And with these thoughts, she went into the house, joyfully informing her father that she had returned. But instead of the usual interior, she saw completely broken dishes and a crying father sitting in the middle of the room. "Miranda, what should I do?" the man asked his daughter, saying that her dad had committed a mortal sin. The girl shuddered, and looking at the broken plates behind her father, lowering her shoulders and head, she asked if he had really taken up gambling again. 10 years ago, Miranda held her mother's hand and tearfully squeezed it. Behind stood her grief-stricken father, servant, and doctor. With her last strength, the woman smiled at her daughter and asked her to take it, holding out the object with a trembling hand. She said that this music box would be with her instead of her. She said that she loved her and that she was very sorry, alas. But with these words, this woman left the world. After the death of her mother, her father became interested in gambling. She thought that after long wanderings he would come to his senses. But then the hope in her did not fade away, and she did not even suspect that gambling would deprive her of all her property. Miranda angrily asked if he was completely crazy. They barely managed to pay off all his debts. She asked how much he owed this time. A man with a bald head entered the house and said that this is how much this worthless house costs. Here he is, a bald moneylender. The girl clenched her teeth and shouted indignantly and said, "If he came for money, he'll just take it. There's no need to spit." The moneylender asked what this had to do with the matter. This house would be his anyway. "What else?" the girl shouted. He must deduct the cost of the broken carriage and the amount he borrowed. The bald man said thoughtfully and arrogantly, if he was so eager to protect his home that he paid off all his father's debts. He threatened Miranda if she did not bring 1,000,000 gold by tomorrow, he would throw her out of here. The girl fell to her knees in despair and clenched her fists forcefully. Even though she had 1,000,000 gold, she had to resolve the issue with money, no matter what it cost her, however. Friend, this would be repeated time after time. Suddenly, another man came into the house and said that there was nothing worthwhile in this house. Yes, it was destroyed, but he hoped that it still belonged to the Baron. Miranda turned to the front door and saw a dark-skinned brunette with brown eyes, who asked her if she was the only daughter of Baron Avon. Sitting down on one knee in front of the Baroness, he grinned and said that she, by the way, was his type, and it was a pity that they met as a debtor and a usurer. "Oh, so you're a debtor," he mockingly reminded again, and said that this means that he is in an advantageous position. The girl grimaced her face. She, looking at his grinning expression on his face, thought that this man emanated danger. He said that one date could extend the return period. "A date with a moneylender?" Miranda asked displeasedly, and abruptly rose to her feet and said that under no circumstances, never in life. Then the man took out from his bosom the box that her mother had given her before her death, and asked if this might change her mind. She was horrified. Stretching out her hand for her thing, she asked the guy not to touch it, saying that it belonged to her mother. The moneylender said nicely. Then he would take it. He said that she could return this box if it was so dear to her, and the next moment, Angry, the girl threw a bag of money at him and angrily told him to take everything. The dark-skinned moneylender easily caught the bag of money and grinned and asked, "So did you have money?" She said that there was exactly 1,000,000 gold pieces in it and demanded that she give the box back. The guy said not to worry, he would cherish her until they paid off the interest. Miranda looked at her father in anger. "Miranda, that is," the guy said. And when leaving, he said that his name was Winner, and smiling, asked him to remember this. The next moment, the door closed noisily. The man ran up to his trembling daughter and whiningly said that her stupid father had no honor at all, that he did not deserve her forgiveness. "Father." Then a girl called the man, holding back her tears and frowning, and said that this was the last time. She said if he sits down at the table again, she will start cutting herself. "I understand," the man said, trembling and crying. "This will never happen again." Giving the man a stern and murderous look, she said that the truth would begin. The man nodded his head in fear. The girl looked out the window and thought, pay again, how much longer she should do this, how much she should try. "Darling, come back to me. Your place is here next to me." It seemed like it was written in the newspapers. Now she wanted to be not the little girl of that rich duke, but herself, the real one. But now, a few days later, Miranda is again sitting in the image of the same little girl who disrupted the wedding, not understanding what is happening. "Darling." The Duke of Winter turned to her and tenderly kissed her hand, and then, raising his gaze, he suggested, "Let's get married." What he just said, the girl looked at him in horror and thought, he is proposing to the man who ruined his wedding, and she is seeing him for the second time in her life. The day after the engagement ended, at the Fruit Guild office, Miranda whined about her headache. Louis, drinking coffee, asked the worker what happened. Why was she half dead since the morning? A hangover, she answered, drank a couple more glasses at home. Smiling, the guy replied that he would have done the same thing. Alcohol became so tasty as soon as 1,000,000 gold appeared. "Yes, of course," the morally dying girl answered, sighing heavily. Everything was swimming before her eyes, and there were huge bruises under them. But that money was no longer there. Louis almost choked on his coffee and, frozen in place in shock, asked what she was saying. They were gone. The cup fell out of his hands, breaking on the floor. "But there were," Miranda said, "but they are no longer there. They all disappeared." This really puzzled the guy, and he arched his eyebrow and looked at her. "I keep thinking," Louis suddenly asked Miranda uncertainly where her money goes all the time. He said that he specifically gives her orders that bring in a lot of profit. But no matter how he looks, she's broke. She doesn't buy clothes, doesn't use cosmetics, but she has a cart and a good house. These words cut straight to the heart. "Yeah." Louis suddenly guessed and asked if she spends everything on food. With a start, the girl asked what if not. "Well," the guy said, "you decide how to manage your money. He has no right to interrogate her." Miranda sighed. If something happened, he is ready to listen to her. But still, eating well is the most important thing. Spending money on food is not at all a sin, he said. When there was a knock on the door creaked, and Louis's secretary, Patrick, appeared on the threshold, greeting the gentleman. He happily said that he had brought a hangover cure, as he had asked, and seeing the girl's condition, he realized that it was for Mrs. Miranda. Louis thanked Patrick and asked if he had anything to do. The guy said no for today, after which Louis looked at the employee. And leaning his elbows on the back of the sofa, the guy told Miranda that guests would soon arrive and asked if she would come out for a minute with Patrick. Both guild workers were surprised by the proposal, and Louis said that she was walking, sober up, and could return. Looking displeasedly at her boss, arching her eyebrows, she asked if he thought it was so easy, and whether she should, and she didn't have any money. As a result, Louis handed the money to Patrick and sent them out onto the street. Miranda even ate too much in the establishment they went to and praised him. "But, Miss Miranda," the guy suddenly asked if she was hot. She was pouring sweat. The girl said that she was sweating on purpose so that the alcohol would evaporate. Now she felt alive. Patrick also noticed that she felt better, but the Baroness admitted that she probably felt worse because of hunger. She walked around a little and her mood lifted, but in a moment she turned and said that the guests would return soon, and it was time for them to work. And so the workers of the Fruit Guild approached their place of work, looking in surprise at the luxurious carriage nearby. Taking off the hood of her cape, she looked around and thought that some aristocrat had arrived. She couldn't believe who she saw in front of her, the incredibly amazing, sexy Bentley Winter. But why was he forgotten here? The girl ran into the room with Patrick and, opening the door with a slam, loudly told Louis that this was a Bentley Winter. Indignant and shocked, she asked what they should do. He found out that they decided to ruin his wedding. He had to run away urgently. When Louis said that this is not what he was here for, the Duke himself arrived to give them a task. Apparently, he had heard good rumors. The girl asked what kind of order it was. The grinning guy said that he asked to find the girl with pink hair who disrupted the celebration and asked if this was not the ideal order. After all, they already know who this criminal is. Miranda laughed nervously and said that of course they know. She wondered if he understood that this was not a task that should be accepted out of the blue. Isn't the Duke a scary, powerful magician? A joke to him? By the way, Louis suddenly said, he promised a reward greater than the previous one. We'll take it, the girl immediately said, clutching her head in despair. The guy sat down on one knee to be on the same level with her and told her not to worry so much and asked if he had ever entrusted her with dangerous work. But she seemed to remember something like that. Louis said that the meeting place would be their guild reception room. If anything went wrong, she could call him right away. The next moment, he put his hand on her shoulder and supportively told Miranda to relax. Patrick said that their master was good at fencing. The girl thought that after completing this mission, she would be able to pay off her father's debts once and for all and would still be able to return her mother's music box. Well, there's nothing to be done, she thought, and said okay, she'll take on this case. Who knows? Maybe this way she'll finally get rid of this psycho. If she does not have the opportunity to escape, then she will force her to escape. And with these thoughts, she opened the door and greeted the Duke. Duke Bentley Winter had been waiting for the girl for some time, folded his hands on his chest, and, opening his eyes, told her to sit down. The girl swallowed. He was too calm. But after this meeting, he would run around like he was scalded and tear out the hair on his head at the sight of pink curls. Miranda said that she did not expect him to come first, but how else did the Lord ask? He was madly waiting for the day when he could meet his beloved baby again. The Duke of Winter asked, smiling. She was so surprised that she almost choked. She thought that she needed to pull herself together. It was starting to look like a duel. There is a cliff all around them. They cannot retreat. This is an instant defeat. The first round. Let the strongest win. But the best defense is attacks, and she asked, which means the gentleman missed her so much and still couldn't forget that hot night. How could he even forget about such an event? The guy with violet eyes repelled the attack with a grin. He would like to hear from the lips of his baby what happened that night. Do you think she will be scared? Miranda thought, and said that they had such a hot time that the next morning she had no voice. Then her body ached terribly. She didn't think that she would ever be able to forget it. The guy listened to her smiling. But contrary to expectations, wasn't he suddenly getting ready to get married? She asked. This man definitely forgot everything that happened between them, she thought then. But he remembered everything. Tears flowed from the girl's eyes and asked how, as if nothing had happened, they were going to have a wedding with another woman. And now he came to her with the words, I was looking for myself. Friend, she got up from the chair and hit the table with her hand and said that he didn't even apologize to her, neither shame nor conscience. The Duke looked intently at the girl, who mockingly wondered why he looked so gloomy. Was it really unpleasant to listen to all this? A special tactic of rejection worked. She thought that this bastard would sooner or later fly out of this room, continuing to talk about feelings. It was like a duel, where she, waving her sword and making her move, said that he must certainly take responsibility for the damage caused to her soul. What will he say? Bentley Winter, the girl who ruined his wedding in the stupidest way, demands that he take responsibility. Yes, she's just gone crazy, clearly, the Duke said, grinning. So that's what exactly his baby wants. So he ran away too early. He asked for forgiveness for not preparing the ring yet and kissed her wrist. Darling, he turns to Miranda and proposes marriage to her, tenderly kissing the fingers of her hand. The Baroness in the pink wig looked down at the man in surprise and asked what kind of wedding this was. The guy asked if she didn't want him to take charge. This one, but he at least knows her name. Where has it been seen that they would propose without knowing the name? He replied that marriage was a last resort. Looking down, he said that this was the most effective way to find her. The next day after the night together, she disappeared. The place of their first meeting was a banquet. and when their eyes met, he was able to recognize her without words. They were born to meet each other. During conversations, the smile did not leave their faces. Had he really met a person who suited him so well? Duke Bentley said that he was ready to devote his life to her. "Wait, what are you talking about?" Miranda asked. The guy said dear about that very day. It turns out, the girl thought, he means a fictitious story. But why is it so true? However, in the morning, when he opened his eyes, she, his baby, had already disappeared. He looked for her everywhere. Like a madman, Miranda muttered under her breath, that it looks like he's still like that now. He asked the baby what she said. She answered, thinking out loud. He firmly believed that she would come to the celebration, and clearly he was not mistaken, because now she is sitting in front of her. She thought that he looked like he was not lying at all. Fingering her fingers, she thought that she understood perfectly well that these were just fictions. But for Bentley, everything might not be so. "Sir," she turned to the Duke. She would like to ask if it is possible that his beloved is not her, but another girl with pink hair. After all, if he really made a mistake, then everything is much simpler than she thought. The Duke laughed and asked why she thought. She said that his story was different from what she remembered. He must love that person so much that he is ready to do anything to win love. But did he really make a mistake and propose marriage to another? The girl asked what he would say about this. The Duke of Winter, smiling, said that he understood the reason for her excitement. He had always been very popular. However, he met her. She is his only beloved, he said, stroking her cheek. The guy told Miranda that her worries were in vain. She thought that this couldn't happen. What a relief. This man, damn him. No matter how hard she stabs him, he still doesn't move, successfully deflecting every blow. Maybe now everything will become clear. The lie will be exposed, she thought. Now it's impossible to do without monetary compensation. Sitting alone with her, he yearns for the warmth of that day. He told her, looking straight into her eyes. That's right, Miranda thought. Bentley Winter seized the opportunity just like she had earlier. If this method works, the Baroness thought, the man's eyes instantly widened when the girl kissed his fingers. Well, she asked, smiling. The feeling of melancholy no longer bothers him so much. The guy was extremely surprised. She pulled the Duke towards her by the shirt, smiling and hugging him by the shoulders, and asked if he was still sure that he was in love with her. What? He was confused, the Baroness thought with mockery. He has nothing to say, so let's continue in the same spirit. But the next moment, Bentley said in fascination that his dear one started it herself and asked him to remember it. It felt like an outstretched sword blade to her throat, but at the same time tender and warm as he moved closer and kissed her on the lips. Miranda tried to escape, her face flushed red. Leaning on the lady, he threw her onto the sofa and pressed one hand near her head. He kisses. He really kissed her, but why? The girl thought. No, he just does it very well. With a trembling but free hand, she grabbed his neck. It was a total failure of Miranda. This feeling, Bentley said, was exactly what he thought, just like his baby. Well, Count Winter asked, wiping his lips and smiling, saying that he thinks this is enough to make sure. No, the girl suddenly said, just a little more, and with these words, she hugged the young man by the neck and pulled him towards her. But then she realized that she had made a terrible mistake, but that kiss was too good, and getting up she wanted to justify herself. When suddenly Miranda heard laughter escaping from the Duke's mouth, he tried so hard to contain it that he even trembled and embarrassedly looked away to the side. The Baroness's sense of shame was at its maximum. Her face turned red, and she asked if he was laughing at her. Laughing, the young man said not at all. She just has a very cute face when she is waiting for a kiss. The girl turned her head away in embarrassment and asked if she could not wait for him. They could repeat what they had already done. In fact, Bentley answered, smiling. Yes, it was all because of this kiss, Miranda thought. It simply takes away her mind. She is already close to losing face. Baby, the Duke then asked what they should name their baby, where they would go on a trip. And while she was wondering if he wanted to ask her name first, she asked him to stop, but she continued to receive blows. And when he suggested repeating this kiss in some picturesque place, she seemed to fall off a cliff, suffering defeat. At the same time, he extended his hand and said that now he could give his girl everything she wanted, and asked what she thought. Just a minute, Miranda asked, and asked that he said that he could give her everything she wanted. Darling. He turned to her and asked if he looked like there was something he couldn't afford. She thought that he was saying the right words so much that it was infuriating, but the Duke kept asking about character, face, and maybe sexual intercourse. He told his sweetheart that he was confident in himself, and she knew better than anyone what it was Mira mentally asked not to read her thoughts and looked at his groin area. Whether it was a kiss or a passionate night, he said that he would fulfill any desire of his baby. The sword fight with this man was shamefully lost in one moment, she thought. But that means he, the boy, promises to give her everything. A passionate night, kisses. She thinks that's what she wants. But the real reason she is here is money. She asked if he could give her money if she wanted it. Money, the young man said thoughtfully. Mira thought that maybe it wasn't worth asking for such a thing, but if she pisses him off, then it's for the best. The Duke certainly said she doesn't even know how much money he has, and from now on, his body, feelings, and fortune all belong to her. Miranda chuckled and thought, well, I guess it's worth a try once if he doesn't notice that she's from the Avon family. Then all the problems of her life will be solved. In a new house with her father, the dream of opening a cafe will come true, the opportunity to eat meat every day. It was an ideal marriage. She thought that she had absolutely nothing to lose. He literally put victory in her hands. When Bentley said that this was the end of their meeting and he had to go and asked what his sweetheart's answer was, Mira, shuddering, said that she needed to think. Well, since she needs to think, the Duke said, he gives her 15 days, no more. He is not a particularly patient person. The girl stood up after him and, asking the gentleman to wait, asked if their next meeting would take place here. He said that he did not know if there was a better place to meet. He was going to buy her a gorgeous ring, and asking her to think carefully about his proposal, he left the room. After a while, Miranda came in and smilingly told her that she had done a great job. But the next moment he saw his worker walking in circles around the room and muttering something restlessly under her breath. Coming closer to her, Louis asked what happened to her. Something happened. Miranda worriedly said that she needed to settle something. Settle it. Louis asked what she had done and why she was rushing around like that, when he suddenly saw abrasions on her arm. He abruptly grabbed the girl by the hand and, worried and angry, asked what these marks were, what he had done to her. He beat her. Miranda said that nothing like that happened and asked to calm down. The Duke just proposed to her. The guy froze in a stupor. The girl said that he promised to give her money, and in any case, she did not think that this was a bad offer for her, so she could profit from it. Bentley Winter said she was the only girl he had with pink hair, but the risk was too great to take his word for it, she thought. But somehow he was able to find her, which means she must become exactly the woman he was looking for. Taking off her false eyelashes, she told Louis that she had to go. There were a lot of things to do, and asked when the payment for this order would arrive. Should come in 4 days, said the owner of the guild. I understood, Mira said joyfully, taking off her wig, and said that they would see each other then. The next moment, the inspired girl slammed the door behind her, leaving the guy alone in the city, who could not believe that Betty had proposed to Miranda. A few weeks ago in the evening, Louis came to the bar and asked him to pour it as usual, but bring 2 glasses and for the second person. Running his finger along the rim of the glass, he was expecting a guest, when suddenly a man's voice was heard, apologizing for being so late. Louis turned and smiled at his friend, Duke Bentley, and greeted him as if he were Bethia. Sitting down next to Winter, he asked if he had ordered everything for him in advance. Louis replied that he drinks the same thing every day. For some time, the guys discussed the passing days and Louis's business, when Bentley asked if he could take one order from him. Louis asked his friend in surprise and interest what kind of order this was. Bentley asked to disrupt the wedding. The yellow-eyed guy said that they are not going to spoil other people's significant events. This is no longer in any way. Betty indignantly asked why he got the idea that this was someone else's wedding, and explained that he was talking about his own wedding. In surprise, Louis spat out alcohol and asked if he was really getting married and immediately congratulated him. The guild owner said that he thought he liked him, and all this time pretended that he didn't understand anything. "What are you talking about?" asked the Duke, and the fox asked. Then why there were rumors that his ideal type was a handsome blonde who looked like a puppy. And besides, they drink so soulfully every evening, Bentley asked if he was tired of living. Louis apologized and asked if he knew who he would marry. "You don't understand yet," Winter asked. "This is the reason this woman gave him a love potion. His friend said that a public execution was too cruel an idea. "Not quite like that," said the guy with silver hair, and asked to let him explain everything. "You can't win a human heart like that, and it will help shut up many. Like those people from the Senate who always harass him with conversations about marriage, and it's time to deal with those rumors about his type, so that people with his delusions do not appear." "It's a pity," Lewis said. "He would be very happy if Bentley Winter finally found a mate." "That won't happen," he replied. "It's time for him to give up." "Okay," said his blonde friend, who looked like a puppy, and after drinking a glass, he asked to provide all the fruit guilds. And the head of the establishment, grinning and blushing, said that the price would be a little high. Where has it ever been seen that such an important person's reputation would be spoiled without payment? And they have a guild member who is perfect for this task. She always leaves visitors satisfied, like their trump card. Neat and precise work requires additional payment, so Lewis asked. The Duke exhaled mockingly and asked how much he wanted, so they signed the contract. And while the guy was thinking about this, Patrick asked what was wrong with his master. "He's been absent-minded lately, but that's okay," Lewis answered. "I thought that he proposed to Miranda, but this was not mentioned in the contract." And then the secretary slipped him a stack of papers. Winter had just arrived at his estate when screams had already fallen on him. The guy explained that he was in the Lewis Guild and asked if he had to report everything to her every time. "Of course," Jennifer said, screaming indignantly that she was his assistant. Didn't he need to adjust his schedule? Bentley said that now she looks like a grumpy wife, but no, soon he will have a real wife, and chuckled. Jennifer didn't understand what her master was talking about, asked how this was a real wife. Winter said that he proposed to her. The girl was dumbfounded. The guy said that he needed to get married while the Senate was not too alarmed, and he had decided on his future wife. The girl continued to be indignant at how he made such a decision. Without saying a word to her, she asked if this was the same girl, and said that he was completely out of his mind. How then the Duke, placing his hand on the slot, calmly turned to Jennifer and asked whether her opinion about the wedding was so important. She said that she would not mind if he were sincere with her, but finding brides was also part of her duties. It hurt her feelings, and the Duke compared them to a wolf and a trembling rabbit. He said that he knows what she thinks about him, so he will marry the person he wants. Duke Winter asked if she had obtained information about this girl. She looked away sadly and handed over the documents. This girl was Miranda Avena, the daughter of Baron Vina over the past few years. The family's situation has deteriorated significantly due to the Baron's debts acquired from gambling. "Miranda Avena," he said thoughtfully, remembering the girl's request to give her money. That's how it was. Realizing what his bride needed, he called his assistant Jennifer, who pricked up her ears. And continuing to look at the photograph attached to the documents, he asked if she could prepare the documents his baby, he thought, needed a lot of money. That same night, when Miranda returned to her home, she asked her father what it was, meat in the omelet, looking at the food. For what reason did she ask? There was always only greens, and by the way, she also liked Kona. Father said that he had collected the remaining money. The man said he was glad to see his daughter eating well and apologized to her. He said that if he hadn't fallen for that woman's bait, he would have cooked her delicious food every day his daughter asked who he was talking about. The man realized that he had let it slip and said that everything was wrong. He had misspoken, to begin with. Miranda chewed the omelet and washed it down. And she told her father that she would only be glad if he could find a new love for himself. 10 years have passed since my mother passed away. This is his life. She asked him not to get hung up on her, but to live the way he wanted, just not to get involved in gambling. The man told his daughter not to worry. After some discussion about his addiction, the Baron took out an envelope and told Miranda to see that she had received an invitation. The girl was surprised to ask from whom. The father said that this was an invitation to a banquet from the Barbarossa family, and that it would be in a week. He would buy her a dress so that she could go there. Miranda said that he didn't want to go there. "What are you talking about?" the Baron asked, and reminded her whose daughter she is, and she doesn't go to parties at all. Tears flowed from his eyes, and he said that it was his fault that he did not treat her properly, that he was sorry. He tearfully begged his only daughter. Realizing that this would not stop, Miranda said, "Okay, I'll go." The girl thought, since the banquet will be in a week, then it's more likely that Bentley Winter will be there. Although she's worrying in vain, she won't know about her. Mira exhaled heavily and said that shopping is like hunting. If you don't have time, look for the next goal. "Here she is, my baby," Bentley said. She is a real professional. He suggested we have lunch after the hunt. He had booked all the restaurants for today so he could choose any. A brave, brave man who is not afraid of the price of armor, as expected from the man who chose her, she said while dining. The guy asked if their baby had enough in their tummy. He could order more, but Mira asked if he could polish it off with dessert. "It's a good idea, dear," said Duke Bentley, "but their child doesn't exist," and asked why she always says that it exists. The girl grew cold, and the next moment her eyes darkened and she abruptly rose from the bed, opening her eyes, realizing that it was a dream. After meeting with Bentley Winter, she feverishly searches for information about the girl with pink hair, but everything was in vain. Even nightmares began to occur. With such thoughts, she came to her boss and asked what he thought about it, but Lewis categorically forbade her. The guy asked Miranda if she really wanted to agree to the proposal. She replied that she had not yet decided, but if everything went well, she would have a lot of money. The guild leader tilted his head back and said that he understood her feelings, but still, this was not the best idea. Firstly, it is too dangerous, but the girl said that she was ready from the very beginning. The guy said that he was not talking about her, but the reputation of the guild. She said that they had already found the person he was looking for, but what should he do when she comes and says this? "It's true," the Baroness answered. The young man said that even if someone showed up to them, it would be that same young lady. But most importantly, he fixed his gaze on the employee and asked if she had money for the commission for expenses. She was surprised that she also had to pay. But suddenly Lewis said that there was enough talk for today. He asked her not to worry. If she had a profitable order, he would immediately give it to her. She thought that he was right. There was no point in putting the organization at risk. She needed to continue the search alone, just to get accurate information. Suddenly, Lewis looked at the envelope with interest and thoughtfully said that an invitation had arrived from a national underground organization. But then the Baroness turned sharply to her boss and realized that there was still a way, a banquet, a place of gossip, just a gold mine for a spy. And so, a few days later, she was already standing in the banquet hall of the Barbarous family, and listening to the conversations, she realized that everyone was talking about the disrupted wedding and the girl with pink hair. This was expected, but there were no people who saw everything live, she thought as she looked around the people. If this time she wastes her time, then trouble will follow, and then she will have to get out with the help of her acting. "Long time no see, Mrs. Miranda." Suddenly, a man's voice came from behind, and the girl turned around. In front of her, she saw a guy with shoulder-length hair. He thanked her for accepting their invitation. It was the son of the Barbarous family, Neville. Bowing, she said hello and said that she was grateful that they invited her, when the guy then offered to talk in private. The young man said that in fact, he was still waiting for the opportunity to tell her about his sincere feelings. Was he really going to flirt with her? Miranda asked, putting his hand on her shoulder. He said that was absolutely true. She asked why he would do that. Neville asked if there was a reason for this. He just wanted to look after her. The girl asked to listen to her because they barely knew each other. The son of the Barbarossa family exhaled heavily and asked why she was so meticulous, acting expensive, and not a penny in her pocket. She asked what he said. In his ear, he told the lady that she couldn't afford anything but this cheap dress. She should be glad of the attention. And he himself did not know how to control his body. Miranda was at first surprised, and then very angry. She was very annoyed by what he said about her father's gift, even if he couldn't give her more. But it was all he had. The next moment, she grabbed the guy by the shirt and looked at him angrily and asked if he had completely lost his fear. Spreading his hands, he asked what Mrs. Miranda was doing, because he said this only out of bright feelings. Proudly raising his head up, he slyly said that love for her glimmers in his heart, and nothing can be done about it. When suddenly, a strange hand lay on the guy's shoulder, and this voice said coldly, "And I'm a very jealous person." Mira's eyes widened. A man's voice asked in Neville's ear, which shuddered what he was doing with the girl he proposed to. She thought that this couldn't be. It was impossible, that he couldn't recognize her. But the next moment, the guy fixed his gaze on her and greeted her dear with a smile. The next moment, she screamed muffledly. The people who were nearby were also in shock that the drunk alcohol returned to the glass. He sharply pushed away the guy who was hanging onto his lady and enthusiastically said that such emotions only made her beautiful. She covered herself from him with her hand. She said anxiously that she didn't understand what he meant. It seemed he had misspoken. However, He asked the girl who sat down on the floor and approached her, sitting on her knee. Whispering in his ear, he smilingly said that she was the daughter of Baron Avina, as well as the trump card of the Fruit Guild, and asked if this did not apply to her, Mrs. Miranda Avina. "But how?" the girl asked. The guy replied that it was not so difficult. He could find out everything he wanted. She was surprised at the answer. "Darling, you've done a lot," Duke Bentley Winter said with a grin. "And you've been a guest and a recovery agent, even leading a secret investigation." It's all over, she thought. He said that he would come in 15 days. He could pretend that he didn't find out. He's about to leave again. What should she do? How to survive? In a whisper, he asked what he should do with her and then moved away. Almond squeezed the skirt of the dress and apologized. This time, she was just fulfilling a request. His money looked so sweet to her that she decided to deceive him, she admitted. And lowering her head, she informed the Duke that she was not the one he was looking for. As he stood up, he said he asked what he should do with her because he thought she was going to run away. "She's on the right. She's just unpredictable," Bentley said kindly and tenderly, her eyes shining. The guy said that he needed to tell her something and, smiling, he extended his hand and asked if she would go with him for a minute. They went to another part of the building, where Jennifer led the gentleman to the right room. He thanked the assistant. The girl followed him into the room and stopped without going deeper. Then Bentley asked the deer why she stood rooted to the spot. He grinned and said that there was no need to be afraid. And with these words, lightning flashed and thunder roared. It's true, she thought. She said that she was really sorry and sincerely apologized for trying to extract, undermining her reputation and honor. She said that it would be difficult for her to pay compensation and asked about another way. "This means," Winter said, "she was thinking about how to make amends, and speaking about this, he asked her to give her consent to the proposal he made." Miranda asked if he was sure to propose to a man who ruined the wedding and made money from it, and is not even angry. Of course, he knew this, but then on the contrary, she looked like a savior for him, and to be precise, he was proposing an unusual marriage. The next moment, the young man took out a sheet of paper from his jacket and said that it was a marriage contract for a year. The girl moved closer, reading the text, and asked about the marriage contract, with a frown on her face, and asked why he was offering her this. He replied that because many people were trying to force him to marry against his will, if she had not then disrupted his wedding, he would have remained married to the one whom he did not want to see. Besides, her family is in debt and he is rich. The Duke asked if she understood what he meant. Mira said that if they got married, that he would be free from the pressure of marriage and she would be free from debt. The guy said that, in general, he had prepared another contract and admitted that he had not said earlier, but had lost something. He lost fame, trust, reputation, and there were also rumors about his love affairs. A wound left on her heart, betrayal, anxiety grew. He pulled out another sheet of paper from under his jacket, but this time it was black. His eyes looked crazy, and he said that he had talked to his lawyer, and it seemed that he should demand 1 billion gold from her. This little guy, she thought, came here for a specific purpose, and from the very beginning he was not going to give her a choice. She happily said that marriage was simply the most wonderful proposal, but the contract required careful reading and looked away. He went to meet her. It was creepy, and he asked if she knew how long he had been waiting for her answer. The girl thought that only 3 weeks had passed. That's right, Miranda thought, a teleport spell. But then Bentley said if she thought he would let her use it, he cast a seal spell on the entire room. Snapping his fingers, he smiled and said that today he would definitely hear her answer and used magic. The guy said that he would even dip her finger in the paint. Of course, it was up to her to decide which of the contracts to put a stamp on. Winter said, either a slave contract with damages of 1 billion gold pieces, she looked around uneasily, or she will choose a 1-year contract that guarantees an extremely pleasant income. She just needs to extend her finger to the one she likes best. He asked Miranda what she would do. The girl said that she understood everything and shouted that she would do it, marry him. While eating, he asked if she liked it too. She said that she had not even read the contract in full. The young man said that he was sure that there were no disadvantageous provisions in it and offered to read it. And smiling, he said that it turns out that from tomorrow she will be married. Miranda laughed. He asked what the story of the girl with pink hair was. He said that her acting was so realistic that he picked up this motive. She should be a writer, she said. The young man thanked her for the praise. How then the girl looked exactly into the eyes of her fiancé and asked why it was she. Looking out the window, Bentley said that it was because he thought she could handle it and believed that she would not give him a love potion because of her strong love. Who knows, the Duke said sadly, looking down and tilting his head to the side. Miranda looked at the young man in front of her in surprise, and soon she turned her gaze outside the window. Looking at the night city illuminated by lanterns, which was pouring with rain, the girl said that there are enough abnormal people in this world. That's exactly what the guy said. As for me, the young Duke said, you are also not entirely normal. The Baroness wondered if he would look in the mirror, when he suddenly began to look for something in his pockets. He said that he almost forgot about it, and opening a beautiful box, inside of which there was a ring, said that he had prepared something for her. Miranda Avina, he turned to his bride and asking her to treat him well during this year, took her hand, put a ring on her ring finger, and told her to marry him. Having arrived, Mira asked if he had brought her to such a remote place on purpose, and thanked her. Bentley asked what these hidden notes of aggression were. The girl laughed. By the way, she asked, when the ceremony takes place, he asked how she would react if he said tomorrow. You're kidding, she asked, and laughing at the facial expression that he imagined, he said that he would already go. Yes, the Baroness said, and after watching him, she turned her attention to his wet shoulder and examined her dress. She wasn't wet at all and wondered if he had tilted the umbrella on purpose. What kind of person he was. He was a lot of weird, she said out loud. At the same time, at the banquet, Neville thought that all his efforts had gone down the drain, Miranda Avina, because she was Bentley Winter's lover. Damn it, he thought irritably, while his body shook with anger and his face frowned. How could he tell her about this? The next day at home, Baron Avina asked his daughter how yesterday's banquet went. It seemed like just yesterday she was just a baby, and yesterday she had already made her debut in secular society. What the girl asked and sarcastically said that it was fun, and noticing the state of her father, she asked what was wrong with him, and what was this strange laughter. The man said that Daddy saw everything yesterday. She was accompanied by such a pleasant young man. And looking at them, he immediately remembered the days when he himself was in love with her mother. He asked hopefully if they would get married. Miranda abruptly put her hands behind her back and, saying that they would talk later, asked for the moneylender's address. The girl's father said that, of course, he didn't look kind, but he wouldn't mock a person who had repaid a debt and put him in a difficult position. Mira said displeasedly that he was still a moneylender, only some scoundrel would do such a low thing as mocking a person who had repaid a debt. No matter who she deals with, she will pay him back and never see him again. With these words, Miranda walked towards Winter. Finally, her life in debt has come to an end. When money comes, a lot can be done. This marriage is just a great opportunity to get rich, and this time her dreams will come true. And while she was thinking, she had already approached the marked place, but did not understand whether she had definitely made the wrong address. While this is true and they, like their guild fruit, are probably using this cafe as a cover, all criminals think alike. Damn moneylender, she thought as she opened the door to her brother-in-law. It means that she works tirelessly every day to open a cafe, and he just took someone else's money and opened his own with it. So, plans change. She will stand the best cafe 3 floors high next to this one, all for the sake of honest small business owners. Upon entering, she said hello and said that she wanted to ask something. A male voice greeted and said that he was listening to her. She recognized the voice of the bald moneylender. He was wearing a cute apron and smilingly asked if he could advise her on their menu. Maybe she would like the recommended dishes. Great, Mira said, walking up to the bar. The conversation will be short and asked to bring her boss. The man pretended that he didn't understand what she was talking about. He looked at her in surprise, tilting his head to the side. The girl wondered if he recognized her. The house, of course, was quite dark. But then she remembered. In the morning, her father told her about the secret code that she would need to get to Winter. That's what she needed. She said that she would place an order and asked that she give her everything on the menu, absolutely all the items, and as a tip, she would pay 5 times the amount on the check. The bald moneylender immediately changed his face when he realized why they had come to him and frowned, and she asked if he now understood what she was talking about. He asked to follow him. Miranda thought that from the outside it seemed that the cafe was not that big, But here it turned out to be such a space. Taking off his apron, the bald man said that she showed up earlier than he thought. "I knew it," the girl said loudly and indignantly. He remembers her and asked why he was pretending then. He proudly said that behind the counter he was an ordinary barista. You can't ruin aromatic drinks and smiles. Stopping near one of the brothers-in-law, the bald man said that they had arrived, and she was still thinking about his ethics while working and spitting in her house, and opened the door. "We didn't get lost and arrived safely," Winner said, turning his head back. "Long time no see, madam. How was life?" he asked. Coming closer, she began to look around and asked if everything was okay with her box. The guy said that she was upsetting him. If only she had said hello, otherwise she would immediately talk about the little thing. How did her efforts in finding her parents' things turn out to be not in vain? She saw a box nearby, and Winner told her to sit down so they could chat a little. But the next moment she threw an envelope with money for 100. I ignored the moneylender and said to count it. Everything was correct. And she immediately ran without obstacles to the box, which stood on the round table, expecting to take possession of the box again. But then she carelessly tripped and began to fall face forward, hitting the box in the process. However, she didn't manage to fall. Winner quickly reacted and ran up to her and grabbed her by the arm and pulled her up straighter. Concerned for the safety of his client, he asked her where she was rushing, not an ounce of caution, and said that he was only happy to protect her. Miranda stared at the guy with her big green eyes in surprise and thanked the moneylender for his help. But suddenly she came to her senses and turned sharply back, shouting about the box. "Everything is fine," the guy said. He put it in a secure package. "What a great guy I am," Winner praised himself, while Miranda ran up and picked up the box, joyfully looking at the box inside. He asked how she knew that the box was in this box. She jumped up without even warning. Mira suggested calling it instinct and said if there were no problems with money, then she went. Winner said that a professional like him just needs to look at the stack to understand how much money is in it. The amount is correct, but the problem is different. The girl turned around. Picking up the kettle and handing his guest a cup, he said that he had brewed too much coffee. He guaranteed that the taste was great and asked, why don't they drink it together? That's how Miranda ended up at the table with a mug of tea in her hands and reluctantly admitted that it was really delicious. He said that this coffee was brewed by their bald man. He said that it was not easy to persuade him to make him coffee. And the girl could not believe that this was his main job. Why do this, being a subordinate of a moneylender? And while she couldn't wrap her head around all this, how he managed to achieve such exquisite taste, Winner continued to admire her. How then, smiling, he said that they were seeing each other together and, looking into each other's eyes, chatting nicely over a cup of coffee, and asked if this doesn't look like a date. "It doesn't look like it at all," Mira answered. Then the young man asked, getting closer, maybe they would go on a real date. No, there was a categorical answer, but he continued to lure and offer alternatives. But then, Miranda showed the cafe owner her ring finger, and the moneylender said that she wears a very cute ring on her ring finger. But he couldn't understand what she wanted to say. Having finished her coffee, she rose from the table and thanked him for keeping the box intact, and she had nothing else to do in his office. Watching the departing lady go, he asked if she would come into the cafe. He would treat her to coffee. She turned around and smiled and said that he would think about it. And then the office door slammed and Miranda left, but the joyful smile did not disappear from the young man's face. After a while, when the bald man saw the girl off, he returned. Winner thanked Sean and said that she was an interesting person, do you think? The barista asked. Yes, said the owner, although she is not his type at all, but for some reason he wants to get to know her better. Miranda Avina. How did it happen that she ran into the wrath of that woman? He asked. And then Sean said that this woman had just arrived, and Winner, having ordered more coffee from him, went to open the door for the new guest, saying that he had been waiting for her and asked her to walk around. Sometimes it happens to everyone that life turns around 180 degrees. Her life has changed beyond recognition after the death of her mother. Then her father got into debt because of gambling, losing all their property. But now she is again experiencing simply unimaginable changes, understanding what it is like to be the Duchess of Solid. The reporters did not even let them leave the house. The clicking of cameras did not stop for a moment, asking for details, advice, and everything else. Looking out the window, Miranda said that reporters are real devils and asked what they were doing. Crowded right in front of someone else's house, Bentley replied that now their romance is the most discussed topic. In order for them to leave, you need to give them what they want. She asked if he was offering to give an interview right here, to which the guy replied that everything was not quite like that. And then one reporter asked to draw everyone's attention there. Duke Bentley Winter and Mrs. Miranda appeared in the open window of Avon's house and asked why they had all gathered. Mr. Suddenly a question came from the crowd, whether he was always with Mrs. Miranda. The Duke praised them for working even on such a hot day and suggested postponing the interview until later. Hugging his future wife, he said that his baby was shaking like a leaf and asked how they dare to hurt his girl. Everyone was very surprised and embarrassed when a cry came from the crowd that he photographed. After receiving the photo, all the reporters ran away, already imagining what the headlines would be, fighting over who would be the first to break the story. Entering the house, Bentley asked if she was dizzy. Miranda replied, "Of course not. It's just acting," and asked what brought him here. The Duke of Winter said that there is something that should not be forgotten before the wedding ceremony. "And what?" asked the Baroness. Grinning, her future husband of the year asked if she had thought about introducing him to her father. The girl handed the gentleman a glass of cold water. The guy thanked the dear and asked if she was hinting that he needed to drink water and collect his thoughts. "That would be nice," she replied. "By the way," Miranda asked around, "who is this girl with ugly wrinkles on her face? Recently she has been trying to burn a hole in her with her gaze." "What kind of rude attitude towards the Duke?" asked the assistant. "Not only did she sit him on this wretched sofa, she also didn't serve him tea." The girl began to answer with a scream. The girls continued to quarrel. Jennifer defended the Duke on all fronts. Winter himself listened to all this in surprise. When he invited Jennifer to smile, his baby was already scared, and the mother's stress was harmful to the baby. There was silence in the room. And then Duke Bentley, smiling and looking away, thought that he, of course, understood that there was not an ounce of truth in this. But perhaps he should not have said such a thing. Exactly, Miranda said sadly, and asked, "Their Bentley was very scared. She really thought what fun it was, but she had to live up to this liar." Suddenly, the father entered the room. His hands trembled convulsively, and he asked Miranda what she was talking about. A bad influence, a child, and fell to his knees. Grabbing his neck and pointing his finger at them, he asked in horror if they were really getting married by accident. The girl asked her father to listen to her, but he fainted. When everything calmed down, Bentley said that it seemed his father was greatly shocked and said that Jennifer would be with him until he woke up and offered to talk about their relationship. He asked, smiling, "How about taking another look at the contract? It would be a good idea to check everything carefully." She asked if he was saying this after there were a lot of changes in it. There were 7 points in the contract, and Bentley was glad that she was happy with everything. "Yes," she answered, "but it's still worth adding a couple more points." Having added a couple more points, she handed the sheet to the Duke and asked what he thought. After reading, the guy asked what the reason was. The first point was additional, because the problem was that they would both receive divorced status. In this case, she would be in a less advantageous position than him, so she asked him to bear responsibility for this part and admit guilt during the divorce. "She has no conscience at all," he said in response, but agreed. And about the second, she asked if he understood. Yes, the guy answered, but he didn't think that she would directly ask for it. She said that if he doesn't like it, he can refuse. Well, unexpectedly for Miranda, the answer came, seeing how she changed in her face. Bentley asked what was wrong with her. She herself asked for the keys to the safe. He will give it. She said that she had nothing more to add, but speaking about the 7th point, she asked if it was true. "And what was wrong?" Bentley asked. She was going to love him. "Not at all," she replied. She just didn't understand why he decided to include this clause in the contract. She's just full of self-confidence, so she's glad to see it. "Miranda," her father suddenly called his daughter, distracting the couple from the conversation, and she turned around. In front of her, she saw her father in a pink blanket, looking at her with a pitiful look, and Jennifer, who supported him while walking next to him. He asked for forgiveness. He was so surprised that he fell into unconsciousness. The girl put the contract in her bag. when the Duke stood up and said that he forgot to introduce himself. Placing his hand on his chest, he bowed and said that he was glad to see him, his father, and introduced himself as Bentley Winter Solid. The guy said that he should have come before he already knew about his daughter's situation and apologized for coming so late. After that, the three of them sat down at the table. The father sat quietly and said that he could not believe that the groom of his daughter Miranda was the Duke himself. It seems, the young man said, they are doing everything a little out of order, but if he allows it, he wanted to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage and asked how she herself looked at it. He met her in a wonderful position, and he would be glad if they got married, but this is a spontaneous wedding. On the occasion of the conception of a child, he was worried that this was a rash decision. He asked his daughter if she wanted to marry the Duke. The girl thought about it. Hearing her father's question, she began to realize the weight of her decision. From now on, she will have to deceive everyone she meets, spending her life as Bentley Winter's beloved, and even after the divorce will remain in people's memory as his beloved. Perhaps this would be a new turning point in her life, and she thought she could cope with this. The father called his daughter by name. "Dad, she suddenly said, looking at him with green eyes, and paused, thinking, yes, she can definitely do it. Yes, she said seriously, she wants to become the Duke's wife, and she thought that no matter what happened to her, everything would be better than now. Okay, the man said, exhaling and smiling, saying that whatever happens, everything is for the better. He turned to the gentleman and said that perhaps he had already heard this from his daughter, but Miranda was not his own daughter. The girl lowered her gaze, and the Duke's eyes widened. The Baron said that he and his wife did not have children, and they thought a lot about adopting a child. And one day they met a girl who was wandering the streets all alone. At that moment, something pulled him towards her. He thought that if he didn't take this child, then they wouldn't take anyone. He felt that it was his duty to protect and give love to this little girl. The good-for-nothing father who brought the child into his home makes him suffer so much, so he does not dare to challenge Miranda's choice. But there is a share of selfishness in him that wishes her happiness. Sir? Suddenly Baron Avina turned to the Duke with his head bowed, pledged to make his daughter happy. This touched Miranda very much, and Duke Bentley nodded his head positively and said that he would definitely do it. Smiling, he told his father that he would make his daughter the happiest duchess in the world and took the baby by the hand. This answer made the man laugh and said that he thought they were rushing things a little. And the appearance of a grandson doesn't seem like such a bad idea, he said, introducing the baby. The girl remained silent, and Bentley, grinning, said absolutely. Already seeing off the groom, she asked what else they needed to do. The guy answered, "Find a dress and dowry and be in time for the shooting. There is a lot to do." "By the way, dear," he asked the bride, "will she have time in a week?" Mira asked in surprise why this was. Smiling, the Duke told her to postpone urgent matters, if there were any, and offered to hold the wedding ceremony. The Duke and the woman discussed their affairs. She said that his father was no longer young, so a hospital nearby would not be superfluous. The only disadvantage of this house would be the price. Bentley asked if she said that the high cost was a disadvantage. Did she even know who he was, of course? The woman said she didn't think at all. She said that undoubtedly for him, gentlemen, this is not a problem at all. There is not a single drawback here, and a more ideal house cannot be found. What do you think, dear? Duke Bentley? Winter asked his future wife, smiling. But suddenly noticing what she was doing, he asked what she was doing there, as Miranda asked, checking the condition of the house, of course. This morning, the Duke brought the statue as a dowry, but it might not have entered the door. The man asked not to destroy the entrance, and then the guy said that he understood him and decided to find a mansion for him. "Darling," he suddenly said, smiling, "there is no need to review everything scrupulously. The price at which this house is put up for sale is proof of this." She said that he does not understand anything about swindlers. When Duke Winter asked if she thought they would dare to deceive her right in front of him, this man had an air of madness, danger, and intimidation, and all the characteristics were immeasurable. "No," she said. She even became afraid of what would happen to them. "As expected," the guy answered. "His girl knows him from A to Z." Mira rejoiced at this immeasurable power that now belongs to her. By the way, she suddenly asked how long he would continue to call her his girl. Then the young man asked what he should call her then. The Baroness reminded me that she actually has a name. Miranda, okay? "Okay, my dear Maria," Bentley answered, smiling. She gave up and told him to call her whatever he wants. But in that case, the girl asked, maybe she could call him something less formal. If you want to come up with a nickname, the guy asked, go ahead. The girl laughed evilly, and a very sly grin spread across her face, and she asked what he thought about the princess. Princess, Duke Winter asked in bewilderment. This means that he is comparable in beauty to the princess. It's not like that, Miranda said happily. The prince is scary. Sessa is a snout and altogether is a princess, after what was said. Both laughed fervently. She asked which nickname he preferred, His Highness, or simply, it doesn't matter. The groom said, smiling, choose it yourself. Oh yes, the princess suddenly said, looking at the sunset. He doesn't have to see her off today, that's how it is. But what happened? The Duke asked. The girl wanted to run into the guild. She needed to talk with Louis about the fact that she would not be able to work on the previous schedule, and asked if this went against the non-proliferation clause. No, Bentley answered, and told her it was better to tell her how it is and ask her to keep it a secret. The girl said that she understood, and waving her hand, wished the princess a good journey. In response, the man smiled and exhaled and told her that he would pick her up at the same time tomorrow. We agreed, Mira said. Meanwhile, in the Fruit Guild, a guy sorting through documents said that there were more requests this month, but the income remained the same. He sighed heavily and leaned back to stretch his stiff neck. When suddenly Miranda grabbed him by the shoulder and smilingly asked if he was busy, Louis jumped up in his chair out of fear and asked when she managed to appear here. She answered about 3 minutes ago. Patrick asked to say something to Mr. Louis, otherwise he has been staying here late for days. Do you have a lot to do? Mira asked. Everything is fine, he said. And there was no intention of burdening her, and he asked if he even knew whether to give her some work. The girl shuddered. He asked, smiling. She didn't have any assignments right now. She choked. By the way, Louis, she said, she needed to tell him something. The guy was surprised and puzzled, resting his head on his hand and looking into his friend's eyes, asked what she wanted to say. As a result, she told him everything and apologized for talking about it during such a busy period. But the guy said that this was not the problem, but the danger of this adventure. He asked if she could maintain her faith in people after losing both her parents in an accident, and asked if the Duke knew about what she did as a member of the guild. Miranda, he turned to her, this case is far from so simple, but if something happens to her, he will not be able to intervene. I know, the girl said, looking away. But she had no idea of putting the guild in danger. The guild had nothing to do with it. He was talking about her reputation, honor, and even future depended on it. He asked why she made such a frivolous decision. Miranda asked frivolously. She looks like she has nothing but sawdust in her head. She herself knows perfectly well what weight her decision has. Then Louis asked if this is what a person would do if he understood the whole situation perfectly, and why she didn't even consult him. From the very beginning, he shouldn't have taken this proposal seriously if he had known. As the little girl asked, why would she consult with him? The guy was dumbfounded, and Mira explained that she had already said that these were her worries. This marriage lay on the shoulders of Miranda Avina. No matter how wonderful a boss he may be, this is the personal life of his employee, and no one should report to him, the girl explained. You're right, the young guildmaster said with pain in his chest, clenching his hands into fists. This is her personal matter. So she's going to take a break for a year, he asked. No problem. There are enough workers so she doesn't have to worry. The girl called out to him and asked him to stop. True, he said. When the time came for their trump card to go to work, he would contact her. He apologized and asked if she could leave. Miranda saw how her boss's mood changed, how hurt he was, but now she couldn't do anything. Okay, she said, and left. After a while, Patrick ran into the room and apologized for the fact that they had been waiting for him for so long. Everyone suddenly wanted to drink. He made excuses. When suddenly he noticed that Mr. Louis was alone in the office and asked where Ms. Miranda was, the guy replied that it was already late, so she left. What to do with the tea? The boy asked. He had prepared 2 cups, that's how, Louis asked, and then offered to drink together, and thought that he didn't answer. Not that he didn't know with what thoughts Betty proposed to her, but he knew that he would harm Miranda. He is well aware that Miranda is not a frivolous person. No matter how small the work is, she still takes it seriously early on. It's sad that he's so caught up in the affairs of the guild, but the other guys are wonderful too. There's no reason to worry. But then why? He thought. Here, Patrick noticed the cookie crumbs and asked if this was Mrs. Miranda. It was amazing that she behaved at home, even in the master's room. Laughing, Lewis said that she was like that with them, and asked if she behaved like that on his first day. Yes, Patrick said. He was so nervous at first, but when he saw her, he relaxed. The boy said that he then thought that everyone here was like that, but it turned out that only Miranda and the boss said, and succumbing to the memory of 17-year-old Miranda, he said that only she was lying here in comfort. Then the girl, having first arrived in this room, was embarrassed even to help herself to cookies. He asked her why she didn't eat. Maybe she wanted something else. And how it all came to this, their story begins 5 years ago in the winter. Lewis was then 22 years old. Earlier, he shouted at the foreman that he did not say that the policyholders would be deeply in debt, and among the victims was the house of Alfred, the boy who delivers newspapers. The man asked Lewis why he was starting again. This is their job. He feels remorse for the suffering of a person he knows. That's enough. This place was not for you, he said. Going out into the street, he heard that boy quarreling with the debt collectors, not letting them get closer. This atmosphere was growing alarming, when suddenly he looked into the distance and how 2 more moneylenders blocked the road. They stood and argued with a little girl. She shouted at them that initially all the deadlines were agreed upon, but they were doing everything their own way. Tired of listening to her, the man swung a bat. But the next moment Lewis arrived, and he protected this little girl, repelling the attack with his sword. Miranda was shocked, and he said that, of course, he did not know what happened between them. But it was inappropriate for 2 adult bigwigs to surround a child, much less swing a bat at her. He pushed the man away. He looked down at him and said that it was a very pathetic sight. The men were scared. He stood up cursing and told his partner to leave. Lewis asked if she knew how dangerous the area was. The girl said they called her. This lady looked to be no more than 18 years old, but she did not seem to have studied at the academy either. When suddenly there was a loud rumbling in her stomach, the girl thanked her for the help and said that she would probably go. Lewis stopped her and said that if she went alone, she would run into these guys again on the way. He asked if she wanted to have a snack in his office, but if she was not comfortable, then nothing could be done. The girl was surprised by his offer, and now she was sitting modestly on that same sofa. The guy told her to eat this for now. The soup was still warming up. He told her to drink tea before it got cold, fill her stomach, and come back before it was too late. He would give her a lift and not get involved anymore with those people. Suddenly he noticed that she had not moved from her place and asked why she didn't eat. Didn't even touch anything. Asked if she didn't like the soup at all. It's just that, the girl suddenly said hesitantly. But the guy seemed to understand without words and asked if he needed to eat first so that she would calm down. And having swapped portions of the soup, he ate 1 spoon and said that it would be tasteless if it cooled down and said to eat it. She scooped up the soup with a spoon, and just after tasting it, her eyes instantly lit up with happiness and her cheeks flushed. The guy happily watched as his stew was devoured by both cheeks and a smile appeared on his face. Having finished the portion, she started drinking tea and asked the uncle to listen. The guy was shocked by the address and asked to call him simply Lewis. She had 1 question, and she asked Mr. Lewis, "He works in the guild." The young man shuddered. He asked how she understood this. His head was spinning while he tried to understand how she did it, and the girl grinned. "Everything is clear," she said. "It's worth looking at his office, various documents for disguise, a wig." It seemed strange to her. But now she understood why they did this and asked if she had talent. "What? Are you interested in the job?" she asked. "Yes." The girl answered and asked to be allowed to introduce herself, but the guy abruptly interrupted her and said that it was time for them to go. The girl told the gentleman that he had not eaten everything yet and asked him to slowly talk about the guild. The guy said that it was already very late and it was time for her to go home. "I understand." He asked where her house was and also lectured her so that in the future she would not appear in this area in the middle of the night. The girl, dissatisfied with the moralizing and the fact that people interrupting her did not listen, rolled her eyes and pouted her lips. Miranda suddenly, she said. He looked at her in surprise. "Miranda Avina?" she said, placing her hand on her chest. "This is my name." "Okay, Miranda," Lewis said hesitantly. The girl was proud of herself, and he thought about her last name. It seems he heard it somewhere. The very next day, Standing in the company of his colleague, he loudly exclaimed that he remembered that girl who was chasing him with her tail. He asked. "Yes," said the young man. He kept thinking about it. "Avena, this is the maroon family that went bankrupt." "God," said his friend, "it's a tomboy girl from an aristocrat's family." A colleague asked if he thought that this lady could easily earn a lot of money without really knowing anything. "No," Louis said sadly, "Miranda is not like that." When suddenly the girl looked out from around the corner and called Louis. "Miranda!" the guy exclaimed loudly in fear and asked if she could find him in any ditch. Lifting her nose, she said that she simply had a keen sense of smell and asked if this was an ideal skill for a spy. Today she came to him again with a request, although she would most likely refuse again, Miranda said, laughing. "But since she's here, at least treat her with food?" Louis looked down at the girl in surprise. It still wasn't that easy. In fact, the unbearable days when she had nowhere to go, she came to him. The guy asked Miranda what she wanted to eat. "Soup," she said thoughtfully. And then he said that there was one thing to do. He couldn't trust her to work in the guild, no matter how much she ran after him. Nothing would work out. "Unshakable," she said. "But," Louis told her, "he will feed her at any time and she can come whenever she wants." The girl smiled and said, "Okay." In response, the young man looked back at her gently, kindly, while she was thinking about what she should choose for lunch. He remembered the boy who also thanked him for feeding him. He thanked him for the newspapers. Louis pursed his lips and thought, if you look at it this way, Alfred has not been seen at all in recent days, and he has not received a single newspaper since that day. Then the boy cried bitterly and with his small body protected the crying father behind from the moneylenders. He was thinking that if he knew where he was now, they would have dinner together, when they put a rag over his mouth. The man, threatening him with a knife, asked him, "He works in Guild X, blonde with a puppy face." An unshaven man, covering his mouth, asked him if he wanted to know why he got into such trouble and said that Alfred was dead. He worked damn hard to get back what was taken from him by deception, and at dawn he was hit by a carriage from which he died. If only they, idiots, would not listen to the pathetic scoundrels, if he is even a little sorry, calmly accept his death, he said. The guy thought that he couldn't breathe. It was dangerous. When suddenly, out of nowhere, Miranda flies in and, hitting the moneylender in the head with a bat, calls Louis. Having dealt with the man, she ran up to her friend and asked if he was okay. She was breathing heavily. While on his knees, Louis asked how she knew about this place. She said that she would explain everything later and asked if she should hit him hard on the head again so that he wouldn't wake up quickly. But the guy didn't answer. He looked down and remembered the words that his little friend had died. Having stood up, he said that there was no need to do this, that he was fine, and taking off his cape, covered the man who attacked him with it. And so, a few days later, having gathered in Louis's office, he asked menacingly whether it meant that all this time he had been under her tracking spell. "Yes," Miranda answered guiltily. The guy said that, of course. He understands that she did not have any bad intentions, but don't you dare continue in the same spirit. It's dangerous. He asked what she would have done if that person had not lost consciousness. He would repeat it again. She would not become a member of the guild if she pursued him. The girl apologized. Exhaling heavily, the guy said that this is not just a dangerous assignment. She herself knows that some people have a seething thirst for revenge. "Therefore, come to the guild that I will create," Louis finally suggested to her. The girl's green eyes opened wide, and she asked in surprise if he wanted to create a guild. The young man said that he understands that the idea may seem stupid, and the work is not easy, but at least he is not going to get involved with the criminal world. The members of his guild will not suffer from guilt and threats. That's right, he wants to create a guild that is like a family. She was surprised. "Miranda," he said. She had all the qualities of a guild member: a photographic memory, enviable audacity, and innate talent for acting. The girl did not understand whether this was a compliment. All she needed was a place where she could work safely, Louis said, and she would have such a place, and extended his hand. Mira asked him why he was doing this and pursed her lips, and the guy said that he was sure that he would regret it if he gave her to another guild. "Okay," the girl suddenly said, and getting up from her seat, she shook her friend's hand and, smiling, asked the master to take care of her. The girl thought that she wouldn't even know what happened to her if it weren't for Louis, and that offer was the happiest moment in her life. It sounded like an offer to become a family. All this time she was fingering the fabric of the dress opposite. But then the Duke called out to her and asked what she was thinking about. "Nothing," Miranda answered. She just looked at the dress. "Okay," he answered. He is ready to respect her choice. "What are you talking about?" the girl asked, and instantly moved her gaze to the dress whose fabric she was holding in her hands. The next moment, she abruptly jumped away from him and said loudly that this was not her type. She just took one look. The designer was ahead of his time. "Thank God," Bentley said. He was already thinking about calling the senator, although he would have fainted. And while Winter was trying to find out from his daughter-in-law what had happened to her, the ladies from the store had already called the lady, saying that already bring the dresses for fitting. Miranda told the groom that they would talk later, but for now she would go try on dresses and come back. How these dresses suited her, the saleswoman said. "Dear, you are the most beautiful," the princess said. No matter what she wore, she was beautiful in everything. The girl thought that she was very tired. It was also very stuffy here, and they were just sitting with their hands folded and reacting sluggishly. And so she asked why not the Duke try on a couple of suits. Otherwise, she was so bored. "When will this be over?" asked Bentley. The saleswomen happily supported Miranda's idea and said that they would have to go out together in wedding dresses, so they should try on together. That's what she thought. She said that it takes a long time to put on a tuxedo. And while the Duke was being led away, a woman approached Miranda and asked if she knew how stunning she was considered. Of course, she said. Her social status had skyrocketed in one morning. Well, an impoverished noblewoman would never have dreamed of such dresses. She asked, grinning, how she liked the dresses. Mrs. Miranda must have found this strange, so the choice was especially difficult for her. "Dresses need to be selected according to the characteristics of the body," she pointed out, and asked if she knew about this. The girl was indignant, and while this woman was still trying to somehow humiliate her, Miranda suddenly interrupted her sharply and asked what her name was. She leaned sharply towards the badge attached to her chest and said that the word "stupid" described her perfectly. Apparently, she did not know that it was better not to pester the Duke's fiancé. She sharply tore off her badge and, breaking it in one hand, said to listen carefully, asked if she could see this straight line of shoulders, and told her to wear a dress with open shoulders and a year-length skirt. She said that she would bring 3 of these dresses. She was tired of these dress-up games and said that she had 5 minutes. What strange people. The friend heard the voice of the groom. Bentley said that he ran away. The quality in the store is good, but the owner pays too much attention to status. He was already thinking of looking after her, but she sent him to hell. She already understood, she said. It's funny, because she, however, never had extra money, so she didn't have to choose outfits. And so she got angry. "Good job," the Duke praised her. "Of course," Mira said. With the Duke's name, it's much easier, and she apologized that she would borrow it from time to time. He said that there was no need for an apology. She could very well use it. And finally, they brought her a normal dress. The girl happily said that it was beautiful, that she could do it if she wanted. The girl said that she also brought what the Duke tried on, but the guy told her to leave it and, hugging the bride, said that he wanted his darling to choose a tuxedo for him. Miranda indignantly asked why he was doing so suddenly. The young man explained that they were simply playing the role of a married couple. After all, he must show himself as a loving and caring husband. "Moreover," he said, smiling, "I think you will do a much better job choosing a tuxedo than these people." A blush appeared on Miranda's cheeks. She was a little embarrassed by such a compliment, and the next moment she asked if she had heard him, and what they were doing anyway. "Didn't they see this snow-white skin of the princess, dear, this address?" a friend said to the Duke. As a result, she scolded them a little more, and after the Duke said on the way out that he would prepare everything else, she picked up the dress, and with that her work was over. The girl thanked him. When Bentley noticed that she seemed to be in a better mood, otherwise, she had had such a sour face since the morning. "I'm beautiful even with a sour face, aren't I?" the Baroness asked. The Duke said that he was glad that she thought so. She said that this concerned her friend. He had quarreled with a close friend, which greatly upset the latter. His friend did not understand anything of what was said and wanted her friend to believe as much as he believes in him. He must look like an immature child in his eyes. Winter asked if that meant she couldn't trust him now either. "That's not the point," Miranda replied. "Then wouldn't it be better to approach it from the other side?" Bentley suggested. "The reason for her worries is that she wants to get along with her acquaintance." "I think so," she said. Not me, but her acquaintance, she corrected her future husband. And make peace. The Duke answered this child. It's not about her, she said again. Suddenly, Bentley stopped in place, shuddering, when he saw the brigade in front of him and said irritably that they had followed him all the way here. Suspicious, and not even trying to hide it, Mira said. Pushing his future wife around the corner, he said that they probably didn't like the partner he had chosen, and if they were caught, they would both have to listen to lectures for several days. The groom's family is cruel, if they don't like it, the Duke said. Maybe he could please use a teleport. She asked why he couldn't do it himself. She herself wouldn't be able to transfer two people. Bentley said sadly that he didn't want to use magic unnecessarily. Damn, he said. They're about to be surrounded. Then Miranda noticed a hole at the top of a stone fence nearby and asked the Duke what he thought about that place to escape. The guy stared in amazement at this hole and asked Darling if it was the wall of someone else's house. The correct answer was told by Mira. How quick-witted he is. Bentley asked if she was proposing to commit illegal entry into someone else's house. Don't worry, the girl exclaimed, jumping onto the wall. She knows this area like the back of her hand. She told her future husband that this house was empty and told him to get in quickly. The young man's eyes shone. Miranda asked what was the matter. No, Winter answered nothing and jumped in after him and said that he was just thinking about the old days. Having gone down, the girl said, so they unhooked from the tail and asked if it was good that they did as she said. The young man agreed. For the first time, someone forced him to climb over the wall. Looking around, Duke Bentley asked, but this was not the first time for her. The Baroness rolled her eyes and said that he was a good boy. By the way, here she said, the alley is quite deserted and asked how it was possible to catch a carriage here. The guy asked if they could take a walk then. Their house is nearby. Well then let's go, said the smiling young man, taking his future wife by the hand. Miranda asked why the Duke took her hand. Bentley replied that there were a lot of extra eyes. They needed to play the role of a sweet married couple. Walking down the street, Bentley asked Malaya if her friends would come to the wedding. Yes, the girl said, her father and that friend, and the guy said that he would invite a friend, but he was unlikely to come. He said that there would probably be a lot of uninvited guests, hired killers, envious people, admirers of the Duke, the girl asked. He laughed and said that it would not be bad if the latter came and saw for themselves and everything. He also asked Mira to let him know if there was anyone who might start getting rowdy at the party. Someone like the crazy ex who followed them all the way home after the news of their engagement. Miranda laughed and said that it was unlikely that this would happen. It was even impossible when suddenly she fell silent when she looked ahead. Around the corner of the house that was nearby, Louis stood detached from the world, from whom darkness emanated. The next moment, the Baroness apologized to the princess and said that she thought it was time for him to go home. So suddenly, the Duke asked, since he came here, he thought it would be nice to say hello to his father, but taking him by the hand, she said that that's all for today. Putting her future husband into the carriage, she waved her hand and wished the princess a happy journey, and asked the coachman to take him to the solid family mansion. Bentley was at a loss. Is the ex really crazy? The Lord asked. And even today she won't treat him with cold water. She said that the princess has cold water at home, so she can treat him there. But the carriage had already started moving, and the girl, waving her hands after him, said that they would see each other later. Bentley was shocked. And the next moment, having said goodbye to the Duke, she ran to the very place where she had previously noticed her friend. Running up to her destination, she called Louis, and he looked in surprise at his friend running up to him. He pulled away from the house he had previously leaned on and asked what happened. Why she ran, Mira replied that she would not fall, because she was not a child. That's right, the golden-haired young man said, closing his eyes and nodding his head. Miranda is no longer a child. But in his eyes, he admitted to his worker, she is still that little girl. After what was said, the guy smiled and raised the tips of his eyebrows, continued to look at her, and asked if she wanted to go for a walk. During the walk, she asked Louis if he remembered the day when they founded their guild. I remember, of course, he answered. The girl admitted that then she was glad that she had finally started working, but she was much more pleased that she had a place that looked like a real home. It seemed as if she had an older brother. With such strength, she relied on him and thought of him as a family member, and said that she was sorry for the words she had said earlier. After a short pause, Louis informed Miranda that this was not so. It was his fault, and apologized for his rash words, because she was probably thinking about this decision. "No," the girl replied. "She is reckless and he knows it. He hinted that he was going to do something dangerous from the very first meeting. No wonder how he feels." "Not at all," came the answer from the guy on the contrary. "Their guild exists only because of how persistently she followed them then." "Don't lose heart," he asked. "Smile, Miranda," he said, so that it seemed that he would cry right now, but the smile still shone on his face. The girl agreed with him, and in response to this suffering face, she also smiled back. And then he asked if she had feelings for the Duke. "Why suddenly such questions?" she asked. "How can anyone fall in love with this crazy person?" Lewis explained that he was the most popular guy in the Empire, and believed that falling in love with him was not difficult. It didn't matter whether he liked it or not. They would be together for a whole year. He asked if it would be useful to know the positive sides of a partner. Miranda thought about it, and she said that the possible positive side of the Duke is the pleasure of defeating an arrogant devil. Lewis laughed and said that this is no longer about the Duke, as expected. She is still a child. Mira pointed out displeasedly that he was treating her like a little girl again. Lewis's cheeks were red from laughing, and he smiled and said that he would try not to look at her like that. In response, Miranda, smiling, said that he can trust her just as she trusts him. Now she is already an adult. She is already over 20 years old. Hearing about this, the guy's eyes widened. He seemed to realize the whole truth of time, and a blush appeared on his cheeks. She asked if he would trust her, and the young man answered. Then Marinata asked, "Why doesn't he come to her wedding, okay?" he said, and asked when. 2 days later, she said, the guy's eyes almost fell out of their sockets. At the same time, in the mansion of Duke Solid, Jennifer looked at her master with a worried frown on her face. She thought that the Duke was in such a strange state, looking out the window since his return. Bentley continued to look out the window, and memories of today and the day with his childhood friend flashed before his eyes. Suddenly, he asked whether it was difficult to treat him with cold water. Hearing this, the assistant asked again and asked if he liked chamomile tea. She prepared it for a good sleep. Is it really all because of the cold water that he drank at Miranda's house? The taste was so hooked, but it will cook much better, the rabbit continued to squeal. She told the Duke not to worry. She would contact the merchants tomorrow. When suddenly there was a knock on the door, and a voice asked if Betty was there. Bentley told him to come in, and asked what could have happened to Lewis at such an hour. The young man apologized to his friend for coming so late, but he needed to tell him something, and Winter asked Jennifer to leave. Crossing paths with the girl who was heading towards the exit, Lewis apologized to her, but she replied that everything was fine. And while Jennifer was closing the door behind her, her friend arrived and said that he had a wedding in 2 days. The Duke apologized and said that there was no opportunity to say in person. Lewis said sadly that there were a few things he wanted to check before they got married. He asked Betty if he really didn't like Miranda. Bentley shuddered and asked if the fox knew what a fictitious marriage was, so why such questions? Duke Winter laughed and said that he did not expect this from him. He knows that he will not trust anyone without reason. He and Miranda simply had a beneficial relationship. Then maybe he asked, but Bentley firmly answered no, absolutely. "Okay, I got it," Lewis said, and turned around and went to the sofa. He said that then he had one request. He sat down on the sofa, to which he was so quickly walking, and said that Miranda would be with him for a whole year, and asked him to please become someone she could rely on. Resting his head in his hand, Betty asked if it was possible for a person who doesn't trust anyone to become someone you can rely on. In response, the guy exhaled and smiled and asked that this could somehow be influenced. Duke Winter looked away and said thoughtfully that he would think about it. Then the fox asked her to promise him that she would never cry for him and provide 3 meals a day. "This child can cry even from hunger, okay? I promise," Bentley answered. And while drinking a cup of chamomile tea, he voiced his remarks that he was acting as if he were her father. The guy laughed and said that he was more like an older brother. And rising from the sofa, Lewis said to take care of Miranda, and that he came to say this. "That's all, okay," the Duke replied. And before leaving the room, the guy suddenly stopped sharply near the door and said that he congratulated him, Betty, on his wedding. After that, the guy came out and leaned on the closed door, thinking that Betty was definitely not interested in Miranda. Perhaps she was not interested in him either. Thank God, he thought at the end of his thoughts and suddenly froze. He asked himself why he thought that. 2 days later, the wedding took place. The priest turned to the bride and groom and asked if she vowed to love each other until old age. "We swear," both Baroness Miranda and Duke Bentley said at the same time. The audience protested against this wedding. Someone cried. Then, the priest said loudly and enthusiastically, he proclaimed them husband and wife. Wide smiles lit up on the faces of the newlyweds. Smiling at all the guests, Miranda told the princess that he was bad at weddings, that all his hair was already gray. "Darling," he answered her, "just pretend that she doesn't see it. Look at the guests and laugh, commanding tone," she asked, as if he was not her master. From that moment on, she became the wife of Bentley Winter. In other words, a national thief. The eyes of sobbing women looking at her full of hatred. The beads of tears of a crying middle-aged man were also heard in the hall. She mentally told her dad that it looked strange from the outside. "Stop crying and wipe your snot." Noticing this state of his wife's father, Bentley said to go on their way. It was time for them, Mira agreed. As she walked, she thought if this was a wedding, everything seemed unreal, and now she would open the door and just go home. Suddenly, she had a rather strange feeling that someone was looking at her and turned around sharply. She noticed the furious, ferocious look in the red eyes of the woman in the black hat, but then she turned away. Who is this? Miranda wondered worriedly. A fan of the Duke, but none of them had ever looked at her like that. After the ceremony, everyone went out into the garden. Miranda went behind a column, hid from prying eyes, and thought how tired she was. Living under such attention was extremely tiring, especially these evil looks from the Duke's fans. The life of a star is difficult. Then that woman amazed her more than anyone. She had never seen anything like this before. Suddenly, a painfully familiar voice was heard nearby, asking why she looked so sad on such a clear day. Miranda instantly looked to the side and saw Louis smiling brightly in front of her. She happily said that he had come. Her head was spinning, so she just said hello. The guy laughed and said that on the wedding day it was the only way. "You are a beauty today," he said. Mira was surprised and said that it was the first time in a day that he heard this. Even Bentley Winter didn't say that. Suddenly, a voice was heard. The princess said that he had told her in the store that she was beautiful. Now he was trying to calm her father down and asked what she was doing here. Running closer, she asked her father if he knew who it was. The man joyfully greeted Miranda's boss and thanked him for coming, despite being busy at the restaurant. Bentley was dumbfounded and asked the dear in a whisper if she worked in a restaurant. She replied that she could not tell about the guild, so for her father, it was a restaurant. And so she asked if she could go when the banquet was over. She could, the Duke answered. They had already greeted everyone anyway. Tears appeared in the father's eyes again. His face turned red and he called his daughter by name. Wiping his tears with a handkerchief, he whiningly asked if she was leaving already. Miranda said that he was crying again and said that this did not mean that they would not see each other again. He said that this morning they ate meat together, and as he was getting ready to wash the dishes, he thought that he would no longer use this pan. Today she is getting married. From now on, she will have to live in Bentley Winter and not with her father. After the banquet, she would return not to a shabby and crumbling house, but to a large palace. She hugged her father. Tenderly but firmly hugging the man's neck, she said that she would come back often. It's difficult, but she will try to come to him every day so that he himself will get tired of it. Miranda's husband and friend smiled. And finally, evening came and the coachman told the girl that they had arrived at the palace of the Solid family. Today, she would live here. She was told to rest, so she arrived earlier and thought that, as she had heard, the palace was grand, but for some reason it was very quiet here. Well, she thought nothing special. She needs to rest. Now a soft bed and warm water await her. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from the side. He apologized and asked if she was Mrs. Miranda. Yes. And what did the girl answer? It was a chambermaid with glasses. She said that she was probably very tired after coming that way and asked to call her Lila. She is the main maid. Bentley accompanied his wife and said that servants would be waiting for her in the palace. They would explain everything and told her to just relax. Miranda said if anyone else heard this, everyone would immediately think that she was some kind of child. Winter replied that this was true and asked her to think about what had been happening for several weeks. She asked her husband if the princess had not caused most of the problems. The Duke replied that at most half. Louis watched their dialogue. He saw his employees smiling sweetly and agreeing with his friend. And so she finally got into the carriage and said that she was off and wished her husband see you soon. The next moment, the guy turned his gaze to the young man who continued to drill into his back. Louis looked puzzled at the Duke, who was approaching him with heavy but moderate steps. He came close to the guildmaster. Without ceasing to look into his eyes, a heavy, even oppressive atmosphere hung. How then, the fox asked Betty if he was too close. Now everyone is only looking at him. He needs to be more careful. To which the Duke replied that it would not hurt him either. Bentley told him that he was crossing the line and asked if this was the way to talk nicely to someone else's father-in-law or to compliment someone else's wife. Louis looked at his friend, who was slightly shorter than him, and said that he no longer knew what he had come up with. He simply spoke as a guild leader and a family member. "What's wrong with you?" the head of the guild asked his old friend, and said that he hoped he was just joking. But at the same time, a memory flashed before Bentley's eyes of how his friend looked pitifully at his wife and said maybe. Looking him straight in the eyes, he coldly said that this does not mean that he does not know about their relationship, but asked him to remember that there are many eyes here. When suddenly their conversation was interrupted by Jennifer, who called the Duke and said that there were still many people to say hello to, Inter told his friend that he had to go. Louis said that he had to go too. "In any case," the Duke said, placing his hand on his friend's shoulder, "he should not forget, even if this is not a real marriage, Miranda is his wife." He asked him not to behave so rashly. He didn't want to ruin the reputation of his younger sister. "I understand," Louis said. He doesn't want this and apologized for disturbing him, and then Jennifer ran up. "Go to work," said the head of the guild. "The assistant is waiting for him, and he, however, leaves." Winter thanked him for coming. "Duke," Jennifer said, "it was impossible to let that man go so early." Winter asked if she was sure that she should call her mistress and his wife that way. Smirking, the Duke said contentedly to come up with something else. "Just don't call her dear, it's his privilege." The girl screamed that she didn't even intend to. In any case, they had to greet everyone together, and Miranda left. The Duke asked what was the point of her staying here. She would be tired, and the assistant began to threaten the senators. She said that they were very unhappy that they were not invited this time. The guy replied that they were unhappy with his every action, when suddenly Betty was invited. Looking around, the Lord of the Magic Tower saw in front of him a girl with bright red hair and a ruby on her neck. He immediately recognized her. A wide smile spread across his face, and his eyes narrowed, and he joyfully and tenderly said that she had come, Isabella. At the same time, in the palace of the Aulid family, the maid asked to be allowed to show her the palace and asked if she only had one suitcase, and the girl answered. Looking at the head maid, Miranda thought that she seemed to be a very calm and quiet person, the complete opposite of Jennifer. Lila, noticing that they were looking at her intently, asked what was wrong. "No," Mira said excitedly. She just hadn't seen the servants for a long time. She wondered if this had bothered her, when suddenly the head maid said that since today she is the wife of the Duke, she can address her on a first-name basis. She asked the mistress about this. Miranda was very surprised by this. She had not experienced this for a long time, but she agreed. Layla said that the palace consists of 3 buildings, the main one in the center, the owner's house and an extension on the left, then a garden, which is carefully looked after by gardeners. This is a dining room. The chef works at any time except at night, so she can eat at any convenient hour. Next is the living room, the maid said. When suddenly Miranda asked her to stop, the maid asked what was wrong. Mira said that she was glad that she was showing her all the corners, but she was interested in the question of why there was no one here. It was strange. She couldn't believe that she didn't run into anyone. The maid agreed with her. She said that she was forced to accompany her because the maid who was in charge suddenly disappeared and asked that she be allowed to find out what was the matter and wait for her here. She apologized to her mistress, but as the head maid, she couldn't just look at this situation. It would be good if she familiarized herself with this while she was waiting. The next moment, Lila handed her a book and said that this is the Duke's manual. The location and specifics of the equipment are written here. She, as a wife, should know this. And with these words, she said that she would be back soon and asked to wait a little. Miranda was about to rush after her, but stopped. And so, after a while, she realized that she was lost within the walls of this palace. At first, she was going to go to the room and rest, but the house is so big that even if there was a map, she would not be able to find a single guest room. From the madness of the endless repeating walls, she only realized that it was already dark outside. but did not know how long, when suddenly she turned her attention to the book. Mira opened the page with the rules of behavior and read something about prohibitions. First, not to enter the annex without the Duke's permission. Rule 2. From 1 o'clock in the morning before midnight, it is forbidden to enter or leave the palace. This rule must be observed by everyone, without exception. Even in emergency situations, violating it is strictly prohibited. What nonsense, she asked out loud. You can't even go to the toilet at night or something. How cruel he is, Miranda said. He will pay for this. And again began to look for the third rule in the book, if at this time, when suddenly, unexpectedly, a cold breeze blew along the palace corridor and extinguished the candle near the ceiling. The girl gasped. The third rule of the Duke's behavior, if at this time you find someone resembling an animal, do not look at him and immediately go to another room. For our Duke does not guarantee and is not responsible for accidents caused by ignoring or violating these rules of conduct. What is this? Miranda thought to the guard, seeing the silhouette of a man around the bend, wondering what time it was already. Was it really 11? She tried to read what was written in the third rule, but because of the extinguished candle, nothing was visible, if at that time they discovered she was reading, when suddenly, with her peripheral vision, she saw a hand near her head. She screamed loudly in fear, but the next moment the Duke gently pressed her to him and asked on the way where she had gone. He was looking for her. She looked at Winter in shock and wondered if he was that strange silhouette when she noticed the servants. Bentley asked the darling what she was doing. She would just stand like a pillar and said to jump to him just as she said. "Princess!" she suddenly loudly called her husband, and the maids turned around at the girl's cry. Seeing the Duke of Winter on the neck, she asked why he was so late. She was lonely and sad. "This is unbearable," she said loudly. She missed her princess's breasts so much, the guy with a displeased look said that he tried to come back early. He admitted that even after searching the whole house, she didn't see her anywhere. If she knew how scared he was, the girl said that loneliness depresses her greatly. But then she told her husband that no matter where she went, no one came out. The man turned sharply to the maids and asked what this meant. "Master!" the 3 new maids shouted loudly, sitting on their knees and lowering their heads. "Kill us!" Miranda asked detachedly what it meant to kill, what they were talking about. The girls were trembling with fear. Then Bentley said that it was impossible to leave their offense unpunished, to leave the Duchess without viewing on the very first day of her marriage. The Lord of the Magic Tower asked if he could accept this as a challenge. They were ready to pay for it. Miranda tried to stop the Duke. "I apologize," Lila said, bowing. She, as the main maid, is responsible for the mistakes of other palace workers and asked to be allowed to sort out the situation herself. "Please," she begged, "forgive them this time." The Duke looked arrogantly at his maid and asked if she understood who she was talking to now, when suddenly their tense dialogue was interrupted by the loud rumbling of the newly made Duchess's stomach. She gasped, and when her husband grinned, she suggested that they first eat, and then kill whoever he wants. And now Miranda was already sitting happily at the table, devouring food on both cheeks. She thought how much time had passed since the last time she ate so well. She asked the Duke why he didn't eat, and the guy smilingly replied that you can only get enough from watching your loved one eat. He asked if her previous words were true. Yes, she answered. No one met her except Lila. Strange, the Duke said, the complete opposite of what the maids told him. Mira asked what he said, and the Duke explained that she simply ignored the servants, saying that she did not need an escort. This was not the case loudly, and the Duchess said indignantly, "Even if you ask Lila." The guy explained that he did not say that he did not believe her, but he also did not say the opposite. Leaning thoughtfully on his crossed arms, Inter said that one of them was definitely lying and the maids were hiding something. She was trembling with fear, but she didn't tell the truth. It was clearly not just the maid who did this. Maybe someone was behind it, someone else. To be honest, the friend said Mira, she thought it was the princess's work, something like a surprise. The Duke said he would remember it. The girl said loudly that she didn't like it. If it wasn't him, then they really wanted to intimidate her. But why are they really mocking her, thinking that the daughter of an impoverished aristocrat cannot be their mistress, she thought. Whatever their intentions, they couldn't ignore what happened to the Duchess. He needed to get to the truth, he said. No, Duke, don't do anything. Wiping his lips, forgave his wife. Leave it to her. This is a challenge not only for the princess, Miranda told her husband that she wanted to know the reason why they were doing this, but he asked. "Okay," Bentley said, getting up from the table. Then he trusts her with this. She is a fraudster and far from a simple one. She asked to correct herself. She is a spy. "Yes," the Duke answered, "the trump card of the guild." And finally Miranda got to her soft bed and said that it was just a miracle, falling into the arms of her pillow. She thought that today had been unbearably long. How tired she was. The food was delicious and the bed was soft. The investigation could wait. And this was the first night. For some reason, the atmosphere was unusual, and I wondered if they would sleep together. The underwear they gave her was not much, but would it worry the Duke? She would like them to sleep in separate rooms. But that would be suspicious, she thought. She didn't know, yes, they kissed, but to sleep in the same bed. From these thoughts, she buried her face in the pillow when the Duke came up. He asked the darling, holding his head, if she was really trying to smell his scent on the bed linen. "No," she said loudly, jumping out of bed. "She was just checking to see if she smelled sweat," the guy asked, but it embarrassed her. He straightened the cape that had fallen from her shoulders and asked if she wasn't worried about her clothes or what he thought of her. Miranda stammered and asked what he was doing. She was quite consistent with the look of this room, the young man agreed. "It seems," he said, "the maids were looking forward to this. They had previously given him an eel drink, so should he live up to their expectations?" The next moment, Bentley Winter threw Miranda onto the bed and hung over her, looking straight into her eyes. "Betty, son, soon you will become the head of the Solid family. So don't forget," his father told him. "Many are waiting for the moment when he makes a mistake. He must not be shown to be weak. He must be flawless. Understood?" he asked. "No one can be trusted." "Duke, can you hear me?" Jennifer asked loudly. And when he finally answered, she said that she already thought he was sleeping and began talking about the Senate. He asked Jennifer if she knew how many hours they spent at the banquet and asked at least not to pester him with questions along the way. Ben asked if his darling had returned home safely. Yes, she answered. The maids came out to meet her and told her that they had prepared a bath for her. The Duke said, well, if this is possible, let them not leave her alone. The assistant said that this is contrary to his orders. "No, not in that sense," Duke Winter explained. He meant, let them keep an eye on Miranda. You can't tell, but she is first and foremost a spy who is used to deceiving other people and extracting information from them. In addition, he knows nothing about her abilities, although he is not very skillful in using them. But he needs to reduce the risks. "Okay," Jennifer said with her head down. "She will appoint a special maid as soon as possible." "You must be impeccable." The father said this, but the assistant was looking at the schedule. But the young man told her to rest too. But he himself died precisely because he showed his weakness to someone he trusted, and since then he has not allowed himself to do that. And so he looked at the girl lying on the bed under him, looking at him with surprised eyes, and her cheeks were turning red. You can't trust anyone. It flashed through his head again and again, and he pursed his lips. This curse torments him to this day. In the morning, with the first rays of the sun that brightly illuminated the room, Miranda also woke up. Jumping out of bed, she thought what kind of rich house this was, but immediately remembered that she now lives here. But where has he gone? Suddenly, the girl touched her neck and discovered some kind of choker with a stone in the middle. The click sounded throughout the room when last night the man pushed her onto the bed and clasped it around her neck. Afterwards, he explained that it was a choker that sealed magic he didn't know what it would do without supervision. Excitedly, Miranda asked if something dangerous would happen. Didn't he see how the servants were torturing her? "This could be solved if we fired them," he said. And besides, it was already 11 o'clock, and she asked if she had heard about the prohibitions. It was time to sleep. There was no coercion on the first night, but he put this choker on her, and together they made a mess in the room to deceive the servants. "I don't know," she thought. "He wants to be crazy and cold-blooded, but he's actually playful and friendly, even when he acts like he doesn't trust anyone." Suddenly, the door to the room opened, and the red-haired maid told the lady that she had been told that she was having breakfast in the bedroom today. "That's right," Mira said, turning on the acting and asking where the Duke had gone. The maid explained that early in the morning he went to the Imperial Palace. She told her to clean her room during the day. Otherwise, she had no strength at all after such a night. She didn't think it would be so hot. "Okay," Miranda thought as the maid left. "This is enough to get a head start." Suddenly, noticing the contents of her tray, she stopped the maid and asked her to come to her and told her to bring the person in charge of the food. After some time, everyone gathered in the Duchess's room and knelt down and told the lady to kill them. She sighed heavily and thought that something was wrong with them, as usual, only the head maid was apologizing for them. They began to pray for death when she asked for normal food. Nonsense. She thought that she was trying to be a sweet duchess, but she couldn't. The next moment she wanted to scold the servants, but she slipped on the fabric on the floor. She wanted to grab something to stop herself from falling, but instead, she tipped the entire contents of the tray onto the servants. She didn't mean to be too polite, and although she felt awkward from the fall, she stood up steadily and angrily said that next time she would tear them to pieces. Lila asked if everything was okay, if she had hit herself, but Mira said it was on purpose and asked her to explain this ridiculous diet plan to her. The head maid said that it seemed that the servants were confused with the food. She would talk to the offending maid. The Duchess said that they should not think that they would be forgiven next time. "I will," Lila said. And then their master's wife said that she had plans to take a walk in the afternoon. She would go to say hello to her father. She knocked on the door of the house and told Dad that his beloved daughter had come, but no one opened the door. Afterward, she discovered that the door was not locked. Going inside, she called for her father, but also noticed that the house was as clean as usual. Did he forget to lock the door? Miranda thought. She thought about helping him with the move, but it would probably have to be rescheduled. As she climbed the stairs to the top floor, she told herself that since she was here, she would take the things she had not yet packed: clothes, a disguise. And we should also take my mother's music box. But when she opened the box, she discovered that it was missing. At the same time, Winter was sitting in the cafe and said that the atmosphere was very calming, the weather was good, the coffee was delicious. Was there really no one with whom he could have fun? He was already tired of waiting. There was no music box, but Marinade felt the distinct and familiar aroma of coffee, faint but very sweet. When suddenly a voice called the girl and asked if it was her, Mira immediately recognized her father's voice. She went down the stairs to the first floor and told Dad that it seemed like a thief had broken in. The man was very surprised and said that there was nothing to steal here. There was nothing to eat, his daughter told him loudly. And this was her mother's box. She asked if he had seen it lately. He hadn't, the father answered. She hid it as soon as she returned it. Obviously, the box had been stolen. The Baron suggested that Miranda search together she might get lost among the things she had prepared for the move. But the aroma of coffee still remained in the room. "No," she said. "It's him. She has one guess. Get ready, you filthy moneylender." The girl almost immediately ran into the cafe and asked the employee where her boss was, the bald guest, and asked what she wanted. Hitting the table, she said that she had not come here to drink coffee. But on an important matter, the barista apologized. But such behavior is prohibited in their cafe. "Is he kidding me?" Miranda asked. "I need a password," and began to remember how it sounded, something on the menu. She asked if she could order the most expensive item on the menu. Of course, she asked for a nice strawberry octopus latte. When a voice behind him asked to give him everything on the menu, absolutely all the items, as a tip he would pay 5 times the amount on the check, Miranda turned around. "You," the Duchess said loudly. The guy stood next to her on the bar counter and smiled and said, "What a pity that the missus had already forgotten the password." He asked the girl what brought her here, maybe free coffee, or she finally wanted to go on a date. Miranda came sharply close to his face and irritably reported that her mother's box had disappeared and asked if it was his doing. The guy was surprised at their closeness and said, narrowing his eyes, that he didn't even know and asked the Duchess if there were too many eyes here. "Maybe let's go inside." She reluctantly agreed. Having poured cups of coffee, he said that she was looking around again, telling her to calm down and drink a cup of coffee. He placed the cup in front of her and asked, "It's a wonderful aroma, isn't it? It smelled almost like regular coffee, but much sweeter." Winter said that he would hasten to upset her. "The box is not here. Look as much as you want." "You won't find anything." Miranda asked how he didn't take it. The girl said that no matter how much she thought, it sounded too suspicious. The owner of the cafe said that not all questions can be answered without outside help. "Sometimes you have to rely on other people. That's why she came," he asked. Mira asked what he wanted to say. Taking her hand, he said that if she couldn't do it alone, he would have to cooperate, and again asked her to go on a date with him. Handling her hand with the ring, he said that he didn't need anything else, just to go shopping in good weather, have a delicious dinner, and watch the sunset together. He asked if she would agree, if there was time, to drink a glass of wine, discuss their life, complain about her, laugh at ridiculous stories together. She just needs to spend one day with him. "You value this box very much?" he asked. What nonsense, Miranda thought. She's just shocked. Should she hit him in the philtrum or something? But this brat is her only lead, a date. Nothing is impossible when it comes to Mom's box. She clenched her hand into a fist when suddenly a warm hand was on her shoulder, and a voice behind her asked if too many gentlemen were interested in his journey. "Oh," Winter said, grinning, and Miranda shuddered in surprise, and her eyes opened wide. She asked the Duke how he ended up here. "I forgot that you have something like a bell on your neck that prevents all sorts of trouble when he can't be there," Bentley said. "And he also doesn't allow such idlers as some to approach." The guy was offended by the word idler, and the Duke suggested that he leave on his own. "Wait, Duke!" she suddenly shouted. "She needs to say something!" Winter replied that their meeting had come to an end. They would discuss this wonderful coffee next time. By the way, he suddenly spoke in code you shouldn't roll up your sleeves during a normal conversation over a cup of coffee. In private, such subtleties can be neglected, and after all this, he wished him a pleasant journey. Winter gave him an irritated look. Already on the street, Mira told Bentley that he shouldn't have come for her. She had business to do. The guy asked what business she could have in such a place. He said that he heard that she went to her father's house, and after the signal was cut off, he came here just in case, and found her in a secret room with some eccentric. Frowning her brows, the sweet girl said that they had an important conversation. Bentley asked what kind of important conversation it was with a person who did not seem too reliable. The wife explained that she had come to find the box. The young man frowned, and she explained that this man had taken it once, so she went to him. "It turns out," Winter asked, "she went to him, knowing that he was not an ordinary cafe owner for the sake of some children's toy." After these words, Miranda flew into a rage and screamed loudly that this was a gift from her late mother, not a toy, but all that was left of her. The Duke's eyes opened wide. Bentley Winter was very confused and asked if they should go back to the cafe. He fidgeted anxiously in one place and said that, of course, such an important thing needed to be found, and it was necessary to warn in advance, and in the end he apologized. At the same time, the girl remembered the words of her mother. She told her that if she missed her, that she would just start the box. She would be with her instead of her mother. She immediately remembered that Winter had put something in her sleeve when he was talking about the code, and having found the note, she thought that she would definitely return the box somehow. Having already returned to the palace, she lay down on the bed, placing her hand on her forehead, and then opened the note to read it. All the words of the cafe director literally meant that the information she needed was hidden up her sleeve, and she should look when she was alone. In the note, she read a threat that if she wants to return the box, she must find out Bentley Winter's secret. The order is not disclosed. Otherwise, the safety of everything is not guaranteed. After which the letter burned. Falling back onto the bed, she thought that the work didn't seem particularly safe, and whether she should go at all, but there was nothing else to do. And in general, why does he force her to do these things? Does he know Bentley Winter? Did the box disappear because of the Duke? But no, it's definitely not the husband's fault. The thief is to blame. Winter was definitely involved in this, but did not steal the box. This can be easily determined by the aroma emanating from him in the box. She believed that this faint scent was directly related to the culprit, but there was no point in clinging to something that would not even answer her. Miranda pulled herself together and thought that first she needed to do everything within her capabilities. She would reveal all the secrets of Bentley Winter. When suddenly the Duke came into the room of his flaming wife and asked the darling if she was resting and guiltily offered to talk. They moved to the balcony, and the husband said that he was too careless about what happened earlier. Mira answered nothing. He didn't know. "No," said the Duke. His opinion had changed not because it was her late mother's thing. Each person determines the value of things differently. All his words were said only because he forgot about it for a moment and apologized. Mira said that it was difficult for her to get used to him apologizing twice. Then Winter asked why the man took her music box. She explained that he was a moneylender. He had previously taken it as payment. The Duke asked if they still had debts. "Of course they closed it," she answered. "She just has no one else to suspect. She needs to meet him again in order to get at least some clue. She must find the box at any cost." "That's right," Duke Winter suddenly said. Then they will meet him together. The Duchess raised her head in surprise and asked what he meant. If you investigate something alone, unpleasant rumors may spread. So let's find your music box together. Let's go to that man together, Bentley said. Auntie has nothing to worry about. Moreover, it will be suspicious if you move away from me in the first week of marriage, the young man explained. At first, there was hope in her eyes, but then she remembered the inscription on the note and, lowering her head, hesitantly thanked her. Taking out an envelope from his jacket, the guy said that he also had something that should cheer up his dear, and this was an advance payment. Greedily grabbing the envelope with the money, she, drooling, asked if she could check the amount. The grinning Duke replied, "As you wish." Miranda simply trembled with delight and said that people's minds are cunning, a knot that seemed impossible to untie no matter what happened. But everything melted like a piece of ice in front of money. If there is something that never changes, isn't it money? She asked. It seems that you liked my gift. The Duke said peacefully, of course. She exclaimed loudly. How could she not like the money? Well, the guy said, this is not just an advance payment. It also includes an apology for the case with the box and the disrespect of the servants. The young man said that he heard that in the morning she was served empty soup, and she even overturned the table in anger. Well done. That's what it should have been. Mira was dumbfounded. Now the servants are doing what someone outside says, but he won't just leave it like that. But she shouldn't hold back either. I don't think we can work together for more than a year, the Duke said. The longer they know each other, the more dangerous the situation. He needs to behave more carefully. Even with Jennifer and Lila, Miranda asked, Right, even with Jennifer you need to be especially careful, Bentley said. After this conversation, Miranda became thoughtful, looking at the leaves falling from the trees against the background of a yellow sunset. Suddenly, she asked if she could ask something else, and inquired why it was forbidden to walk around the palace after 11 in the evening. The owner of the estate asked why she was suddenly interested in this. His wife sarcastically asked how terrible his secret was. He said that there was a ghost in the palace that was devouring people. His wife was amazed at how bad he was at lying. The guy asked if she had read the instructions. It was true, and it was not very pleasant to mess with him every night. Getting up from the table, he advised to stay away from this. Not a single similar story has ever ended well. He took a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. He turned around and said, smiling, I miss my dear one so much. Miranda rose after him, but also stopped when her husband said this, and in addition suggested that they go inside. Otherwise, the wind would be cool. Already at night, the men in the mansion were discussing the attentiveness and forgetfulness of one of them, which almost buried them, and what he could do. It's already 11. You can't even go outside. His friend said to pray that they don't get caught. Otherwise, he's already getting goosebumps. It's time for this one to come out. Red eyes, a monster that came from hell. Interestingly, one suddenly asked what was done with those who had at least once seen this creature. The friend replied that he had heard that the Duke executed everyone with his own hands. Yes, this monster eats people, so you don't have to worry about the named guests. But at the same time, one of the maids came out of her room looking around. She walked along the long corridor of the mansion. The clicking of heels and the loud pounding of her heart were heard, when suddenly the fire suddenly went out. The girl widened her eyes and froze in horror. Stand! Suddenly, someone's inhuman and creepy voice was heard. He ordered Stacy not to turn around. A blood-red eye illuminated the back of her head. In horror, she covered her mouth with her hands when she realized that it was the owner's voice. He was asking her why she was not in the room at such a time. The Duke's distorted, cold, and creepy voice said that he knew that she had recently broken a rule. The girl had put something in her mouth. He said that depending on the answer, the punishment would differ, but the next moment the girl bit through the contents of the bottle and fell dead to the floor. The guy only exhaled heavily. A few hours earlier, Lila asked the maid if she was being threatened. She said yes, she was ordered to constantly abuse her mistress. Stacy lowered her head and said that her family members were being held hostage. There was no point in resisting. The head maid asked if the others were threatened and who even gave her such an order. Bowing her head and body even lower, the maid sadly said that she did not know that she should not post this. Lila told Stacy that the situation was very difficult, but such behavior was unacceptable. She would continue in the same spirit. She would not get off with a simple reprimand. The girl told Layla that she understood, but mentally she was very sorry, because nothing could be more valuable than family. For the sake of her family, she was ready to sacrifice her life. At the same time, Jennifer was walking along the corridor, seeing the light. She looked in and asked who could be in the dining room at such a late hour and saw the main maid. "It's almost 11, Jennifer reminded, and the girl said that the floor didn't seem clean enough to her, so she decided to go over it with a mop one more time. She said that some of the maids had been looking lethargic lately, and the Duke's assistant asked if she knew why they had treated the Duchess that way. "You understand," she said, "that this cannot continue like this." Then Linda asked to be allowed to take responsibility for the inappropriate behavior of the servants. At the same time, Stacy clutched the bottle in her hands and repeated the words she had said in her head. "If you get caught, kill yourself. There is no going back. The Duke will find out anyway. But before that, she needs to know his secret." The next morning, Jennifer spoke about their dialogue yesterday and explained that, therefore, from today, Lila is her personal maid. "My personal maid?" Miranda asked in surprise. "That's right," came the answer. "How is this possible, the main maid?" she asked. The husband replied that this had never happened in his practice, but she herself was not against it, and this is the most important thing. The head maid thanked her for her trust and confidently said that she would no longer allow disrespect towards her. The Duchess asked with a laugh. "So that's why Leona checked every dish. That's right. This is also on the list of my duties," Lila answered. "I can rely on you. Take care of me, Layla," Miranda said, smiling joyfully. The guy looked at his wife with interest. How did the Duchess say that if you think about it like that, the maid who asked to kill her for a mistake has not been seen all day today? She continued to look around and asked if she had been demoted. Everyone present was surprised at such attention. Only one head maid shuddered and asked the mistress if she was talking about Stacy. Miranda pricked up her ears, and then, after a short pause, Lila said that she had disappeared yesterday. How did she disappear? She wasn't even in the room. The mistress asked them. Her maid explained that they had not seen her since yesterday. "That's why he asked her to refrain from using her acting abilities," Duke Winter suddenly said. "Apparently, my dear scared her so much when she knocked over the table that she ran away from the guard," Bentley said. Miranda at first did not understand what he meant, and then, pretending to be a typical Northern Duke, she said that she should have treated her normally right away. Then she would not have resorted to extreme measures. The Duke supported her with a gesture of his hand, and his wife said that it was better not to anger her, fear heavenly punishment, and do your job efficiently. Bentley was amused by the phrase heavenly punishment, and she grinned and narrowed her eyes and said that this was enough. His wife looked at him in surprise and concern, not understanding what made him laugh so much and what these words meant. Going out into the courtyard, the Duke explained to his wife that Stacy said that she wanted to rest. "Then what was the point of this drama?" Mira asked. "Such rumors would not be superfluous," Winter answered. The maid who fearlessly harassed the Duchess quietly disappeared. "Do you think someone will bother her after something like this?" he asked. The girl didn't think it would spread. "Yes, and Lila's going to keep her mouth shut, but no," Bentley replied. "He asked Jennifer to talk about it. Anyway, there's no need to worry about Stacy. No matter what she does, he wouldn't hurt her." No one asked what he was going to do, but if it was something dangerous, should she stir things up a little and looked at the outbuilding. At first she thought that there was a secret storage room there, but it seems that going there is forbidden for another reason. She needs to figure it out. The disappearance of Stacy, the bullying of the servants, a separate building into which entry is prohibited, the prohibitions of the palace, all the truths are always the same. "No, we will not go into this building." Duke Winter overtook her thought process and question. Mira said that she didn't say anything. Her husband explained that it was written all over her face that she would go crazy if she didn't get inside. "Maybe Stacy was caught by a ghost too?" she asked. "You don't believe me at all, honey," said the Duke. He said she's fine. The next moment he turned away and said, "Okay, your trust in me doesn't matter." But he really missed her, so Bentley asked him to moderate his curiosity. The girl frowned, but said that she understood. Winter praised her. Maybe she'll be able to convince him and she'll get permission to enter. The girl mentally nodded. He won't give her any permission. She'll have to sneak in there later. Suddenly, both newlyweds instantly raised their heads when they heard a familiar voice that asked how you both were on the street. This familiar voice turned out to be their close mutual friend Louis, who joyfully waved his hand towards them. "How are you, Miranda?" he asked. "Everything is fine." As the Duchess answered, they chatted, leaving the Duke behind. Suddenly, Louis turned his gaze to his friend. noticing how distantly he stood to the side. And smiling, he asked the Duke how things were going with him. Miranda shuddered with awkwardness. She thought that at the wedding, the atmosphere between them was not the most tender. What should she do? How could they continue to bump into each other? But contrary to all her expectations, her husband grinned and shook hands with her boss and said that everything was very good. Thank God, he answered. Everything turned out to be normal. What a relief it was, even though there was no need to adapt to their gloomy mood. However, this handshake was very strange and protracted. She introduced them as friends from classmates from a cheap novel. And while her adopted brother asked if she was eating well, and her husband asked why he should ask, she wondered if they were going overboard. This was the secret conversation between two friends, both squeezing their hands with great force and not expressing the slightest negative emotion on their faces. After this, the Duke asked Louis why he had come, and the head of the guild replied that it was important for him to convey an urgent message to them. He explained that after their wedding, there was a rumor that a love triangle had formed between the three of them, possibly due to the fact that he and Miranda talked a lot. The girl loudly asked who the arrows were even aimed at. Louis explained that they were directed from them to her. What a relief, she said. The servants pricked up their ears. What a relief. What should they do? The Duke asked. And then the head of the guild suggested starting a rumor about her cousin's marriage. Then everyone would immediately forget about that misunderstanding. Cousin? Miranda asked in surprise. She was discouraged by such a sudden proposal. Louis, noticing the expression on her face, asked if she liked it, thought it was too much. Everything is fine, Miranda answered, smiling. It's hard to even call this a blatant deception. It's a good lie. She asked her brother to take care of her. The guy happily answered his sister, Winter said gloomily. If they had behaved well from the very beginning, this would not have happened. Suddenly, Louis also became gloomy and told his friend that he too should be more careful and hoped that Miranda would not suffer from stupid rumors. Duke Bentley was slightly surprised by such impudence and, looking at his good friend, thanked him for the advice. What are they whispering about? Miranda became worried, watching the behavior of the guys when suddenly the Duke was called. The rabbit came up and, apologizing for the disturbance during the rest, said that she urgently needed to give him something. Long time no see. Jennifer smiled and waved her hand, said the Duchess. Yes, she answered Mrs. Miranda gloomily and turned away sharply, rolling her eyes. God, my dear Duke, said the new and irritated wife, it seems that our Bentley doesn't like something. Rushing into Winter's arms, she tearfully communicated with the imaginary fetus and said how painful it was for him to look at the wrinkles on this beautiful face. Bentley told Jennifer that this couldn't be done. Something had to be done about it. I understand, the assistant said indignantly, and saying that it was time for them to drag the Duke away. Well, get lost, Mira shouted indignantly. I don't like you either. But suddenly she turned around sharply and said irritably that he also left a guest, and she didn't even know where the guest rooms were. The guy said that everything was fine. He had already finished with important matters. But he had one request left for her. But it's better not to say it here, and not for unnecessary ears to hear, and the servants only pricked up their ears. Miranda said that she understood him, and so he, smiling, told her to follow him. He will guide her. The girl was puzzled. How he knows the way? Duke Winter, who had not yet gone far, sighed and told Jennifer that they had a guest, so they needed to see him off first. But the next moment he saw his friend and his wife talking sweetly and happily together. He opened his mouth in surprise, but a lump seemed to stick in his throat, and he felt slightly uneasy. They returned to the office, and he looked through the papers and asked if this was all the information about Stacy, and Jennifer answered, she probably took responsibility for her brothers, sisters, and elderly parents. Neighbors said that she loved her family incredibly much. Bentley thoughtfully concluded that recently the whole family had disappeared somewhere. Maybe it was a night escape, he asked. It's unlikely, the rabbit answered. They had no debts, relations with neighbors were good, and the household was well organized. The man clasped his hands together at the level of his mouth and lowered his head, gloomily concluding that someone might have taken them to use Stacy. By the way, he suddenly said, you have also relaxed lately. He was talking about what happened in the garden. Seeing off guests is her duty. And she asks for Miranda, who was only here for 3 days, he asked, lowering his ears. Jennifer said that the man looked like a kind Labrador and everything was probably fine. The Duke got up from the table and said that he knew she was embarrassed with Miranda, but it was her job. The girl apologized, and Bentley reminded her that she, Miranda, was his wife. And going to the exit from the office, he voiced that such an attitude towards the Duchess was unacceptable. Jennifer said that she would be more attentive. After this conversation, the Duke left slamming the door, and the girl wondered if he really liked Miranda, but they seemed to have married under a contract. The two thought they had the same interests, a relationship based on rationality, no unstable emotions. But if he really liked Miranda, if he really wants to trust her, then... But she drove away these thoughts from herself and thought that they would get along, and if you think about it, there are also quite a few advantages. She is cheerful, loud, noisy, impudent. The girl thought about it. Suddenly, a girl sitting in the living room had an itchy ear and wondered if someone was swearing at her. "So what happened?" Louis asked. "Perhaps he knows about the prohibitions of this palace?" the Duchess said. "So she is talking about the curfew." The young man understood and said that several years ago he was asked to conduct an investigation. Then, Miranda asked, "Do you know something interesting?" The head of the guild said that he refused because it was too dangerous, and if they offered it now, he would also refuse. Looking up at his employee, he said that he knew almost nothing about the Duke's secrets, but she couldn't delve into them. No one could guarantee her safety in this situation. "If you wanted to ask about this," he refuses. "Our guild does not take on such dangerous matters," Louis told his friend. "You're right," she said. "But why did she ask about this?" the guy asked. Miranda looked away and remembered the words in the note. And after that he said excitedly that it was nothing, just curious. "Then she can give him another assignment, any whim for your money," the former boss answered. "She said that we are talking about a certain aroma, Swedish, somewhat reminiscent of the smell of roses. Even from a distance it feels persistent and strong, no specifics in general." "Okay, I'll do it," Louis said. "Tomorrow I'll go to the most popular perfume stores," she thanked her friend. The head of the guild said that it was touching to hear from her, as Miranda, remembering that, loudly said that she had something else. She directed her gaze directly into Louis's eyes and asked him in a serious and wary tone what kind of relationship he had with the Duke. This isn't like him, Bentley thought. Jennifer is going a bit overboard. She's being too hard on Miranda. Although she herself was not very polite to his assistant, he thought that he could not resist. Something else was bothering him. At the same moment, Miranda looked at him seriously and asked in a wary tone what his relationship was with the Duke. "What kind of questions are these?" Louis asked in surprise. He said that they have an ordinary relationship between the head of the guild and the fake husband of his employee. The guy asked why she was suddenly asking. The girl said that he knew his way around here too well, and they often whispered without her. Louis sighed in surprise and asked if this upsets her. The girl nodded in agreement and said a little. "What a relief," the guildmaster said. "It also saddens him to see her with the Duke." Miranda raised her eyebrows in surprise and her eyes widened, her spy sense telling her that Louis's distress was of a different nature. Louis, the Duchess thought, she knew, loved the Duke. The guy looked away embarrassedly, his face turned red. She thought, since when did they have a relationship? What should she do? She wants to support, but this is her husband, albeit a fake one. As the guy said, even despite this grief, he feels relief, which makes him happy and sad at the same time. Miranda asked if he feels for her. The young man asked his friend why he hated her. They were still good friends, relying on his wild imagination. She couldn't believe it. "I think it's for the best that he knows someone who will be around you for a while," Louis told her. That same evening, Patrick came out of the establishment where Mira went to mate with a hangover, when suddenly he heard some strange human howl not far from him and turned around. Mr. Louis sat dejectedly on the bench and holding his head, thinking why he did this. It would burden Miranda. The boy came closer and asked what he was doing here. Didn't he go to see Miranda? He replied that he had already returned. "What happened?" Patrick asked his master. "He looks very downcast." Louis said nothing special. And remembering the expression on her face, I again realized that she was confused. I was worried. What if she said that she no longer wanted to be friends? It was worth following Betty's advice and being more careful. But seeing them together, he seems to lose control over his own words and actions. Be that as it may, he told his worker that he just like some child, he also wants to have his own corner. Louis clenched his hands into fists and told himself to come to his senses so that he didn't feel it. He couldn't stop working. He told his employee that they need to do some research starting tomorrow. They need to look for perfume stores nearby. The boy said that he would be busy with paperwork, but the employer said that he would do it in his free time. Then Patrick asked if he was abusing his power. They lay in an embrace on the bed, and the Duke asked what she was talking about with the main guild. The girl said that it was about life. Bentley said that it would be better if she spent time with him. And after thinking about the non-reciprocal feelings of her friend, she asked Winter why he pats her on the shoulder from time to time. The guy said that this is a way to relax the body and mind. It's obviously time for someone to sleep, Miranda said, laughing. And then she asked her husband if he wanted to tell her what he did at night. The Duke, closing his eyes, categorically said that he did not want to. The Duchess moved closer and, putting her hand on his neck, asked, "Even so?" Bentley Winter was very surprised by this act and asked if this was her best seduction technique. Miranda blushed. Pouting her lips, she said that he doesn't even tremble from such closeness. Betty asked. But she wants him to tremble, he told Dear, that if he really falls in love with her. He stopped patting her on the back, and instantly he slapped her again a couple of times and said nothing. "It's time to sleep. Hey, let's finish," the wife asked. But her rooms began to stick together. She thought that sleeping here was definitely more pleasant than in any other place. But today she wanted to conduct an investigation instead of sleeping. Miranda thought before her eyes closed completely that it had been so long. Feeling someone's warmth in bed somehow reminded her of her mother. But then she dozed off, and her thoughts immediately transported her to sleep, where she found herself in a dense green forest. The girl did not understand where she was and began to call. Then Mom, then Dad, when suddenly a voice behind her greeted her. This black silhouette of a small man, the size of a child, hugged Miranda from the back. She asked who he was and what this place was. The black silhouette told her in her ear that she wouldn't drop anything anyway, and asked her to just remember something so that no matter what happened, she wouldn't escape. The next moment, she sharply opened her eyes. The light of the sun's rays blinded her, and sleep. She realized and thought that it had become cold. Having checked the place nearby, she realized that the Duke had woken up earlier and got up. She thought that she was going to stay up all night, when suddenly Bentley asked the darling how she slept. Miranda jumped up sharply, called her husband a pervert, and asked if he was here. The guy repeated his words and asked if the first thing she did was check if he was in bed. "Oh, come on," she said, puffing out her cheeks and asking, "There's nothing to do. Why is he home at this hour?" Sighing heavily, Bentley said that a guest would come in the evening, one very annoying person, and told her to be ready, because he was a representative of the Senate. That evening, Duchess Miranda's face of horror, shock, and stupefaction as she looked out the window was a sight to behold. A man was greeted on the threshold of the palace, standing under an umbrella and smiling at her. Miranda simply could not believe that her father-in-law was the moneylender. And the woman next to him, who was looking at her through the window in surprise, means she is her mother-in-law. It was difficult to wrap her head around all this. "Of course, this is a fictitious marriage," said Senate member Marquis Dudley. He could not believe that Bentley Winter, who always shunned women, suddenly became a caring husband. It was too unnatural. Others agreed with him. They believed that the Duke was marrying to avoid external pressure, which means he should be held accountable for undermining the reputation of the Senate. "We must not forget about the restrictions on changing the Duke's successor. We must make sure that the marriage is fictitious," said another. The men agreed, but wondered how he would do it. Why don't they talk to the Duke personally, and whether it would even work? Suddenly, a dark-skinned man rose from the table and, placing his hands on the table, asked to give it to him. Winter argued that he, unlike them, was free. Someone said that he was really suitable for this business, and the guy asked about objections. There was no answer, and he nodded his head and said that silence is a sign of agreement. Well, then he declines. When suddenly one of the senators asked Dudley whether this mysterious man could be trusted at all, he said that there was no other way out. They could not control him. Someone asked why they decided to use him as an agent in the first place. Dudley replied, it was because the Duke's grandfather was his guardian. It was raining. Miranda, who decided to drink tea, invited Lila to stay with her and asked if she had time. The maid said that she would answer only what she could. Mira asked if there was something she couldn't tell. Lila said that it was a secret of the palace or a ban from the Duke. The Duchess tisked. The girl asked if she herself wasn't curious about what secrets this place was hiding. The maid replied that if she stuck her nose where it didn't belong, she wouldn't be here, just like the missing servants. This surprised Miranda. She could not believe that Lila had said this, although she knew that the servants did not have the most flattering opinion of the Duke. They consider him heartless, cold-blooded, ready at any moment to get rid of even the most peaceful servants, and incapable of understanding. But he has another side. On a rainy day, he tilted his umbrella so much that his shoulders got wet. Does he always do this? Miranda wondered, and with a sigh, she realized that now even the rain reminds her of the Duke. She thinks this way when she looks at any person with an umbrella, but this person is definitely beyond the scope of possible ideas. The girl's face showed despair, misunderstanding, and horror. She even opened her mouth in surprise, and the hand that held the cup trembled. She thought that Wenner had forgotten here. Did Bentley Winter really owe him, she thought? Did she really marry a swindler? When Lila said that it seemed that these were guests from the Senate, she needed to go out to greet them. The Duchess remembered that her husband had spoken about this, but she could not even imagine that this idiot was her father-in-law. He appeared before the aristocrats and introduced himself as Venner from the Senate. The couple was losing their minds, and Mira asked, "This brat is his father. What a rich imagination you have," Bentley noted. "But then why did he come as a Senate?" the wife asked. Duke Winter became wary and told his wife that he too wanted to ask what such a hooligan was doing in the Senate. The guy who arrived laughed and replied that he had been attending meetings on behalf of his grandfather for a long time. Miranda was very wary. Her eyebrows furrowed as she looked at the moneylender she knew. Wenner is this man, a moneylender, but also the owner of a cafe, and now also a representative of the Solid family. But who is he really, she thought. How then Duke Bentley rescued her from her thoughts, calling her dear to lean closer. Wary and distrustful, he looked at his wife and asked her if she had called him. The girl was indignant and loudly asked why she needed this. "Who knows?" the Duke answered in a whisper. He knows about her music box. Maybe she wanted to talk to him about it, when suddenly she, looking straight into her husband's eyes, firmly said that he told her that they would figure it out together. The guy's eyes widened. He watched his wife with surprise and interest as she asked him that he would help her. Maybe he thought that she had already forgotten. The next moment, she turned the young man's head to the uninvited guest and offered to simply interrogate him, since he himself had come to them. As Wenner said here that the two of them are really on good terms, this is encouraging. They look like real spouses. The married couple gave the fool an arrogant look, and the Duke displeasedly asked what other spouses they should be, imaginary ones or something. The Duke ordered enough of this nonsense and asked why he was here. The moneylender was dumbfounded and reported that the Senate was very concerned about their marriage. He handed over a piece of paper and informed Bentley Winter that he had been given the task of helping them. After that, he grinned and said with sly eyes that for this reason he would live at the Duke's residence for a while. Miranda was stunned in shock and indignation, not understanding what was wrong with the married couple. The Duke only tisked with displeasure, leaving the soap with himself, and then the girl shouted whether he was going to live here. She turned to the princess and asked what was happening. He was joking. "I'm afraid it's true, dear," the husband said, holding his head. "What to do now?" Miranda asked her husband, and he said doomedly that first he needed to call Jennifer. The woman who started this mess ordered him to find out whether they were really married, and if there were feelings, to act according to his specialty and destroy everything. She said to seduce one of them or something else, separate them at any cost. The guy thought that he, of course, was confident in himself, but it would be interesting to watch. At the same moment, Mira shook her husband by the shoulders and threateningly reminded him that he said that she would not have to live with his family after the wedding. Bentley asked if she could not let him go, and then start screaming. Venner explained that this was the decision of the Senate, and they could not change it, and asked to be shown the room where he could stay. Miranda asked if he really couldn't forbid him to stay here. He's the boss here. Bentley irritably explained that everything is different with the Senate. If he controlled it, this man wouldn't be here. Then Venner came closer to the Duchess, and taking her hand said, "It seems that she's not happy to see him. How annoying," and asked if last time was not fun. Miranda gasped in surprise and asked what he was doing now and turned her gaze to R. But his reaction was not long in coming. His eyes filled with anger, and in cold rage he said, placing his hand on his wife's hand, that he was crossing the line. "She's a princess," Miranda suddenly called out to her husband, and looked first at him and then at the moneylender, who said in surprise that he just said hello. But Bentley had a different opinion and said that the Senate was breaking through the bottom. This was already an insult to him and his wife. And Wenner said that this was not what he meant at all, and apologized. Bentley squeezed his wife's hand and said that this was some kind of insincere apology and ordered her to repeat it. Mira mentally told him to calm down because he himself told her that she needed to be careful with the Senate. This would not end well, and the next moment she called out to the princess and kissed him. Venner, who was still present here and watched the events from the front rows, was stunned and wondered if his presence was embarrassing them. She grabbed her husband's chin and told her princess not to worry. She didn't need anyone else but him. "Therefore, there is nothing to be jealous," she said, drawing out every syllable and word, tenderly hugging her husband, who was simply discouraged. At the same time, Venner also felt awkward. He cowered and, stuttering and in a trembling voice, asked for forgiveness and said that he was glad to see his friend after a long time. "But I'm not happy at all," the Duchess said indignantly and asked, "Please don't upset my princess." Here the Duke said that he understood the intentions of the Senate. He would be allocated a room, but there were several rules that must be followed while in the palace. Firstly, this is, you can't leave the room after 11 o'clock in the evening. The guy from the Senate asked what would happen if he left. "Who knows?" Bentley answered. "If something happens, they are not responsible for it." The guy said that he was not going to do anything. He was just curious why such a ban came about. And having listed the remaining 2 points to the guest, he said that all questions to the Duchess should first be discussed with him. "If he is so rude again, he will not leave it like that," Duke Winter warned the man. "I will keep it in mind," he replied. "What's wrong with him?" Miranda thought in surprise. He seemed to her much more sensitive than usual and asked if he was tired. After that, Venus was escorted into the room and he thanked the lady with glasses. Lila completely ignored him. "How indifferent," he said as he collapsed on the bed, and that he already missed the smell of Sean's coffee. When suddenly he remembered that he asked that lady if she had taken that music box, the girl asked, "Miranda visited this place." "Yes," he answered, and was very unhappy. He said that it would not be easy for him to get close to her. The red-haired lady said that this was a big problem. If he had not returned the box, this would not have happened. The guy shuddered. The smile did not disappear from his face even after the accusations, and he said that he did everything he could when suddenly a cup of tea flew at him. A rather deep scratch remained on his face, and blood began to flow from it when the woman approached him, and he shuddered again when she asked if he was tired of working for her. "You have grown up a lot," she said. "A tramp who had nowhere to go became the owner of a cafe. Lately, the business has been booming, spreading by word of mouth." She threw the guy onto the sofa behind him, climbed on top, and said that she was very proud that she had once picked him up. She, smearing the blood, asked what he was going to do next. Maybe he was thinking about independence. "How about this? Because everyone will be wondering who this handsome cafe owner is." She was crazy. She could tell everyone about his past. "Which choice is more fun?" she asked, his eyes wide open, but his smile never left. Then he narrowed his eyes a little and said that he would sneak into the Duke's house and live there for a while with the Duke's couple. "What do you think?" he asked Isabella. The girl smiled contentedly and told her employee that it was very easy to push him around. And so he lay on the bed and thought about Miranda Avina and Duke Bentley Winter. Their relationship was much stronger than he thought. However, they seem more like friends or siblings. It seems like they are just pretending to be spouses. There is nothing strange about their situation in a contract marriage, and he thought he would report it, and he wouldn't have to seduce anyone. The only problem was that he didn't have hard evidence, so he had to do as much as he could. Outside the window, heavy rain was pouring. Only its noise could be heard in the estate. Lightning flashed, thunder rumbled occasionally, a quiet night. A professional spy always knows when it's time for him to act on his own. He can't hesitate. She won't sleep a wink that night. It was necessary to wait until the Duke fell asleep. If Oa was nearby, it would not take much time. Bentley came into the room and asked the darling if she was sleeping. He sat down on the edge and said that she was sleeping so soundly that she was able to answer clearly. And then she suggested that the princess keep her distance today. He asked why. There is no need to pretend to be a couple when they are alone. It's not so difficult, said Bentley, and this is his bed. It's difficult, she answered firmly. Today there were already a lot of tedious things to do. The guy turned to the window again and said that he understood her. She turned away. And after a while she asked why he continued to sit motionless. The young man explained that he needed to make sure that she fell asleep and thought. After spending some time in a quiet room, listening to the sound of the rain, he began to speak. Mira perked up her ears. Turning his head slightly towards her, he asked if it was necessary to kiss him. Miranda's eyes widened. She was quite surprised by such a question, and, slightly realizing what she had just heard, lay dumbfounded. Suddenly, she got out of bed and arched her eyebrow and asked the Duke what he was talking about, since he himself was kissing her as if it were some kind of trifle. It was the case, the guy said. As she herself noticed, he was a little tired. His nerves were on edge, Miranda said noticeably. She lay down on the bed again, turning towards the wall and covering herself with a blanket, and said that when she is tired, this is absolutely normal. A person cannot be perfect forever. Then Bentley decided to say that, in fact, this had already happened before. He called his father Dad at a meeting of the Senate, and then he was not lightly condemned. Then the successor of the current Duke said that he didn't even know the basic rules of behavior. What a rude person, Mira said. And indeed, Bentley agreed, smiling. But the funny thing is that for such an insignificant blemish, they are simply ready to devour him, and for serious achievements he does not even receive banal praise, because this is a given, because he is a solider. He said that he must be a perfect person without a single flaw, and no one has ever told me the words that you said, the Duke admitted. He blabbed something. He didn't want to disturb her sleep, the guy said sadly. Everything is fine, Miranda answered, but she's about to fall asleep. The girl made herself comfortable on the bed, ready to sleep, and Bentley Winter turned around and looked at the back of his wife. His hand suddenly reached out to his Duchess, but he stopped himself in time by slightly squeezing his fingers and wished his dear good night. Now the time was approaching 11 o'clock, but at that moment, Jennifer continued to sit at her desk. There were already bruises under her eyes from fatigue and lack of sleep. They were already sticking together, when someone put a cup in front of her, and she shuddered. It was the main maid, Lila. She asked the master's assistant if she was still here and reminded her of the time. That's the point, said the rabbit. This concerns Mr. Venner's visit. A conflict has broken out between the Duke and the Senate. Anyway, don't linger, said Lila. The girl thanked her for her concern and asked what brought her here. It seems that she is here not only because she is worried about her. The maid asked if she had already forgotten, but she herself asked her to understand what the Duchess was trying to achieve. Did you find something strange? Jennifer asked. The maid said that before that she would like to ask something. The head maid asked the assistant a direct question about what happened to Stacy. The Duke's assistant almost jumped out of her chair because of the unexpected question, but she didn't answer. I'm sorry, Lila said. Please? She asked. Pretend you didn't hear me, the girl said uncertainly that she could be understood. She takes care of every maid, and Stacy too. She put down her hand and said that she trusted her. Jennifer didn't look like she was hiding anything, and it was true. She sincerely stated that there was nothing to worry about. She didn't know much, but she could say one thing with confidence. The Duke also cares about her. He may look tough and scary, but Bentley Winter will not harm his people. He especially doesn't take unreasonable measures. She knew that she didn't sound particularly reliable, but she had been working as his secretary for a long time and could be sure of that. Layla thanked her, although not much. Her heart felt lighter. It's a pity that there is no accurate information, the girl apologized. Well, as for Mistress Miranda, the head maid began to speak. Exactly, Jennifer said, and asked if there was anything strange. No, nothing. At one point, Lila said quite calmly. The rabbit became indignant and asked if she hadn't come to tell her something. No, the maid answered. She just threw bait. Jennifer was somewhat offended by this fact, but Lila asked her not to worry about it. If something happened, she would report. Literally immediately after the end of the dialogue, as soon as 11 struck, Miranda opened the door to the street. But she immediately closed the door and thought that a professional spy always knows when it's time for him to act. but the rain was too heavy. Whatever happens, she thought, armed with an umbrella that she found nearby, it's not easy for her to get up after 11. Miranda, going out into the street, thought that Winters Bentley, no, we shouldn't miss this chance. Go ahead to the outbuilding. Although the umbrella was broken due to the wind, she was glad about it. Once she got there, all that was left was to somehow get inside. Placing the umbrella nearby, she began to look around. The door, of course, was locked. The only way out was to open the window. And having examined the building and the windows nearby, she realized that the window was open and wondered if this was an advantage. She couldn't leave. It was obvious that something dangerous was happening, as if her own body was warning her that this would not end well. Miranda thought that if she were the heroine of some thriller, then all the readers would hate and adore her at the same time. This is dangerous. It was not for nothing that they said that some kind of evil spirits live here, that they are in trouble. They cannot even use magic. They need to return. Even though she knew it, she thought maybe they just wanted to scare her. But there was definitely something here. She entered the illuminated room, directly from which the light illuminated the previous corridors, and saw a girl. The red-haired girl was lying on the bed. Miranda's eyes widened when she realized that it was Stacy. Suddenly, behind her, a cold but chillingly familiar voice was heard, which asked, "I told you how much I missed you, dear." The Duke grabbed her by the shoulder. "It would be nice," he said thoughtfully when she was already unconscious, "if you listened to my advice." He took out some pink bottle and poured the contents into the IV and put the tube in Stacy's mouth. Even before he had time to ask anything, she consumed the poison of her own free will. She was an honest servant who silently did her job. Her action cannot be attributed to arbitrariness. She must have received an order that she could not disobey. Perhaps it was the same that forced her to harass Miranda. But why does she want to find out my secret so much? Bentley thought, looking at his wife, sleeping peacefully in the nest. Watching her snore loudly, the young man realized that she certainly couldn't be called an angel, but her sleep was fine. "It's better for us to keep our distance for at least a day." He remembered his wife's words, and even then thought that this was a good excuse. Even at that moment, he realized that she was going to go there today. He was really glad that he hung a bell on her. In general, he recently learned two things. The first is that his magic does not work on Miranda Avina. Take the same sleep magic as an example. If you time it, then usually everyone falls asleep. You just need to activate the spell. But with Miranda, everything is much different. Even with a short distance, it took a long time for the spell to still work. Because of this, he had to stay close to put Miranda to sleep, but she simply kept his distance. Looking at his wife, who was already seeing the 10th dream, he thought that he no longer knew whether she was smart or not. Second, she has something to do with him. Miranda ignored the warnings not once. Her intentions do not seem evil. Maybe that's why it was decided to help Miranda get inside. He thought about warning her properly, but he wanted to find out why she was so interested in his secrets. "You too were told so many times not to do this," he said, and asked. She also received some kind of order. "Yes," she said in her sleep. For a moment, he was very scared because of the sounds that she had stopped breathing. But when he heard a good and loud snoring, he exhaled with relief. At the same moment, he thought and remembered what his father told him. "Betty, don't forget, you can't trust anyone." He was worried about how easily he opened up to people. The boy asked his father. He didn't trust his mother either. The man asked in surprise if he was asking about his mother. Betty nodded. "Didn't trust her," he said coldly. The boy's eyes widened. He tried not to trust her, but for some reason he wanted to do it. Perhaps she was just the kind of person you could share your life with, someone you wanted to trust without fear of betrayal. Then the baby was very surprised by his father's words. He still did not understand their correct meaning, but the man kept smiling. And then he said that someday he would have just such a person, and he looked at his peacefully sleeping wife. He was thinking what to do with this troublemaker. He couldn't force her to sleep on a chair. It was almost midnight. There was no other choice. In the morning, Miranda barely opened her eyes, as if not wanting to let go of the happy moments of sleep. She thought it was so warm. The Duke, it turns out, was so soft. When suddenly she opened her eyes, and as if she saw a corpse, she screamed loudly. "She got enough sleep?" the Duke asked. Not everyone can scream like that in the morning. The girl was even more horrified when she saw her husband and screamed again. From fear and fright, she could not even pronounce the name of her own husband, and she, smiling, asked where she was taking the princess. Now the Duchess realized what happened yesterday. Not only did he frighten her by approaching her from behind, but he also put her to sleep, and maybe knocked her out with a blow. Miranda, feeling her face turned away from Bentley, and thought, "Leona died. This is heaven." Winter told her not to worry, that she was still alive. Coming closer, he, glowing like an angel, asked where she thought he would send her. The girl shuddered all over and thought that it sounded terrifying. She, frowning her eyebrows and squinting her eyes, asked her husband what was wrong with Stacy, and she herself thought that she was still warm, which means she was alive. Bentley told Miranda that Stacy also violated the ban, which is why she encountered a monster. "Stop lying," she shouted loudly. But suddenly her contract husband interrupted her and coldly said that she was exactly the same. She came here by deception. He asked how many times he told her to leave the poor outbuilding and why she wanted to come here. Mira shuddered. Again remembering the note, she lowered her head and said that she was just curious. Duke Bentley Winter paused for a short while looking at his wife and said, "That's how it is." He turned around and called to follow him. They needed breakfast. He promised to feed their good guest. Miranda wanted to stop the Duke by calling him a princess, but she stopped. For some reason, she felt ashamed of her behavior, or maybe mistrust of him. The house was noisy, people talking, rustling, and tapping cards, when Mira's father's friend stopped the man and asked if he was trying to deceive him. "It's been a while since we sat down at the same table," said one man. "I see that everything is going very well for you." "Well, now let's move on to the main game," he suggested, and asked how things were going with the bets. But Baron Avina suggested stopping there. They came for a housewarming party. It would be better to light up the evening with a fun game. The aristocrats were surprised by the Baron's behavior, but the next moment they cordially agreed with him. "How wrong Baron Avina is," thought the red-haired woman. "His whole life is a chessboard." The man invited Mrs. Teresa to play with them, but she didn't mind and, raising her head, agreed to the game anyway. His games were too simple and boring. Sitting at breakfast, Miranda thought whether the Duke would understand her if she told him about the reason. She did not know. But she knew for sure that after that day he stopped calling her dear. But it's annoying and looks ridiculous. It's obvious that he does it on purpose. Well, okay, she thought. This is for the best. Otherwise, she gets goosebumps from this nickname. She won't call him princess anymore, she decided. When suddenly a Venner came up to her and sat down next to her, and noticing how she was aggressively eating her meal, asked the Duchess if something had happened. Mira said that she has no appetite anyway. If he needs to talk to her, do it through the Duke, and got up from the table. The guy said that he would love to, but they have been avoiding each other lately, and he needs to convey something. The girl had already called out to the maids and told them to bring them the Duke, but she stopped when she saw a note in the hands of the moneylender, and he said it was better to accept it. One of the maids asked if they should bring the Duke. "No," she said loudly, and ordered her to catch a peacock. The girls immediately ran out into the street and, chasing the bird, said to each other that if they didn't catch it, they would say that they didn't know anything about it. At the same time, Miranda had already received a secret note from Venner. It was written about the assignment and that everything was fine with her father in the mansion. She was already incredibly shocked by the new message, and then they also threatened her father and looked at the smiling moneylender. At that moment, this constantly seemingly mockingly smiling face made her very angry, and she grabbed him by the tie and asked what it meant. The young man was so discouraged that the smile disappeared from his face. He said that this was given to him and he has no idea what is written there. "Then tell me who sent it," Mira ordered. "What a pity," he said, that he could not tell anything. "Maybe," he said, "if she went out with him, the situation would change. Stop talking about this nonsense," she said. Venner asked if it was too much to call someone's feelings nonsense. "You yourself didn't care about other people's feelings," Miranda loudly told him. "Since you need something from me, you should at least know what kind of person I am." The Duchess even pointed out that whoever sent this note knows at least something about her, and if he really wants to go on a date with her, first find out what kind of men she likes. She abruptly, as if disgusted, pulled her hand away from his tie and said that at least this way he would know that she simply hates people who steal her jewelry. Finally, she turned around and said loudly as much as she could that she hated him too. He was with this thief and was pretending to be white and fluffy. Further across the room, there was a noisy stomp on the door, and then the door itself closed with a roar. Venner was shocked. Immediately after she left the moneylender and her husband's mansion, she came to her father's house and, opening the doors, loudly asked if he was at home. She asked if everything was okay, if anything had happened. The father looked stunned at his daughter holding a pan in his hands and said that everything was fine. What a relief, she thought. It even became easier to breathe when she saw her father in perfect health. Exactly, the friend said barren. This is your first time in this mansion, and asked if she wanted to have a snack. Mira said that, of course, she already had breakfast. What a pity, the father said sadly. And he had just prepared her favorite stew. Hearing this, Miranda immediately rushed to the table. He rejoiced at his daughter's appetite. If I went to the annex again, she thought, Bentley Winter might not leave her alone this time. But if Stacy was safe, she thought at dinner with her father, he certainly wouldn't kill her. But you can be sure that the Duke will be very disappointed. But they are only having a fictitious marriage. Why should she worry about it? What if he hates me? She suddenly thought, as she climbed into the extension window and realized that this was not the time to think. For her father and the box were more valuable. As expected, there seems to be nothing special here, and nothing has changed since her last visit. Suddenly, not far from the window, she noticed an unusual door and did not remember whether it was there. But still, pulling the handle of the doorknob, she entered the room, where she was illuminated by a bright and warm light. What is this? She thought as she moved forward. Maybe a greenhouse. But such a space is not visible from the outside. It turns out to be magic. Moving further and further, she wondered if this was the Duke's secret, when suddenly something from below attracted her attention. A child was sleeping on a wooden trestle bed, wrapped in a soft white blanket. She leaned closer, putting her hands on her knees to look, and wondered what he was doing here. Was he really lost? This child, Miranda suddenly thought as she peered into the boy's face and hair. It seemed like she had seen him somewhere. When suddenly there was a rustling sound that made it clear that the boy was waking up, the Duchess shuddered. The boy was still not completely awake, but he had already sat down on his knees and began to wipe his eyes. But then she noticed something unusual, and, raising his head up, he crossed eyes with Miranda and screamed loudly in horror and fell from the trestle bed. The boy ignored the question about her well-being and immediately became alarmed, and angrily asked how she got here. The Duchess was surprised at the impudence of this child they had just met, and he had already switched to you and replied that he had come here on foot. Wait, Miranda has turned on full brain function. He has silver hair, purple eyes, strange déjà vu. And this kid also had the same way of speaking. Could it be that the Duke's secret is his hidden son? Before her adoption, she lived on the streets of the Empire, not remembering anything about her parents or herself. The winter cold and hunger were incredibly hard to endure, but it was even harder to live with the knowledge that you had no one to share the warmth with. She still clearly remembered this grief. It was incredibly difficult for a child to be alone. Had the Duke really locked him here so that no one would find out? That's why he created the ban, she thought. That's the kind of person he is. Bentley Winter. Why the hell, the boy suddenly asked worriedly. Is it not easy for you? The compassionate Duchess suddenly asked plaintively. The guy didn't understand what the question was at all. But the next moment he found himself in the warm and soft embrace of his wife, who was hugging him tightly to her. She put into those hugs those feelings that she had no one to share with when she lived alone, and little Bentley's face flushed red. Trying to move the two-room apartment away from him, he, all red, asked what she was doing. Miranda calmingly replied that everything was fine. She was on his side. Hugging the baby again, she said, "Your father is a complete disappointment." She asked how he could keep such a wonderful child locked up. Bentley asked him to wait, but she, pulling the boy's cheeks, said that you can't hide from genes. What a nice face. And this irritated grimace looks like a punno pan, she said happily. Her face turned red, and she asked what his name was. Bentley could no longer resist this onslaught of love from his wife, although he tried to squeeze out a normal answer. But he quickly gave in, and, having separated from Miranda, he blushed and looked away and said, "Call me Beatty." "Betty!" the Duchess exclaimed loudly. What a sweet name, and just as enthusiastically asked what he was doing here. His dad locked him here. The boy asked not to misunderstand him, but his father is not like that. There is a reason for this. Mira thought about the reason. And then Betty said that he also had one question for her. He asked if she didn't know that entering the annex was strictly prohibited. His father told him about something similar. He heard that they recently caught some scoundrel who was trying to get here. It was her. But Mira could not answer. And Betty continued to ask questions about why she violated the ban twice. She mumbled, and he asked if she shouldn't be told about this. "Yes," said Miranda, hugging her knees and looking at her husband's child with kind eyes. "There is a reason." "Which one?" the boy asked. But when the Duchess stood up, she apologized and said that she could not reveal the details. And she explained to the little boy with silver hair that she was doing this for the people dear to her. Betty continued to sit on the grass in the lotus position and asked about her father. He was also dear to her. She firmly answered that it was a secret. This question embarrassed Miranda a little, and she said that she, of course, could become his mother's rival. But it's not that simple. The guy glared at his wife with an arrogant look while she said that he was still small. He knew little about adults and was thinking about how to explain. "Forget it," Betty said, getting to his feet and asking, "Why doesn't she come back? What if her father finds out about something and it's true?" Mira said. "Come on, let's hurry up," he said, putting the trestle bed in its original place. "And he will keep everything a secret." "How understanding you are, not like your father. I take my words back, little angel," the girl said cordially and friendly. Suddenly, the child's face and ears turned red, and he told his wife if she was bored before bed, that she could come over sometimes. "None of them," said little Bentley Winter. "He also needs to sleep." Such words really touched the Duchess's heart. The next moment, she lifted the boy into her arms, hugged him from the back, and pressed him tightly to her and said, "Okay, tell me if it's hard for you alone." In parting, Miranda waved her hand with the wedding ring and, smiling, wished Beth good night. The young man looked after his wife, and as soon as she left the garden, he exhaled heavily. After her adventure, the girl returned to the shared bedroom, slamming the door, and discovered that her husband was not there. She thought that he was raising a child by locking him in some kind of greenhouse. Such a person did not deserve forgiveness. Although it seems that that child does not hold a grudge, she concluded, remembering Betty's words, and began to think about the reason for everything. She went through many options in her head, ranging from the strange behavior of the Duke, ending with the appearance of herself. She was wondering who his mother was. But then the morning came. The birds chirped outside the window. The sun gradually began to warm up. The Duke woke up all red. And rubbing the bridge of his nose irritably and frowning his eyebrows, he said, "I haven't even closed my eyes all night. Seriously, you fool." In the morning, he returned to his palace and found his wife snoring in their room. He sighed heavily and said that she was sleeping so well after everything that happened last night. He moved Miranda to the side and decided to lie down too, and asked in a whisper if she felt better after finding out everything. He remembered what happened. "You can call me Betty," she reminded him of that child. She probably does now too, but her eyes closed on their own. "What is this?" Miranda thought as she woke up. It was something familiar, so soft and voluminous. And when she opened her eyes, she realized that she was touching the Duke's chest. Bentley Winter, she was surprised by his presence when he came and why she put her hand on his chest. But it's true, Miranda thought, looking at her husband's beautiful and sleeping face. Betty is a punopan. The Duke's secret, which he so diligently tore away, was hidden by the child. That means the wife is also hidden. She drew parallels in her head, but she wondered who she was. This question kept her busy all night. In any case, if she tells everything to Venner, she will finally get at least a small chance to return the box. All this time, she continues to hold her husband's chest with her hand. When suddenly Bentley woke up, Miranda abruptly jumped out of bed and asked if she was awake, and why at such a late hour. He said that he had not slept well. The Duchess asked the Duke why he could not sleep. The guy replied that he had a nightmare. This interested the girl, and she asked what kind of nightmare it was. Bentley said that in it she hugged the head of the guild. She thought that Louis was a second father for Betty. Nonsense. At the same moment, Duke Winter had already gotten up and heading towards the entrance said, "Come out, you need to eat," and turned around and added, "Darling." Miranda was touched by this address. Goosebumps ran across her skin and a blush appeared on her face. He called her that again and she said, "Come on, princess." During the tea party, Layla asked the lady if something had happened. She asked why she thought so. She explained that she had eaten less for several days, and now everything was back to normal. Miranda smiled and said that he and the Duke had quarreled a little. It seems that the conflict had already been resolved. True, Lila asked, and I didn't even notice anything. The Duchess was surprised, but I thought it was for the best. Miranda asked if she could ask her a question and asked, looking out the window at the maids, what they were doing. Lila said that this is the Duke, whom she ordered to catch yesterday, and now the maids are taking care of him as part of discipline. She said that this morning they tried to ruin her shoes, so they had to use exercise as punishment. There's definitely someone behind this bullying, Miranda thought. And then Eureka, she thought. Maybe it's Bentley Winter's wife, or if she's one of the maids. If this is true, she is forced to hide due to the difference in status, and some daughter of a fallen aristocrat suddenly appears as his wife. But she is also a victim. Why is she doing this to her? This is fraud. There was not a word in the contract about a hidden wife. She asked Lila what she thought about a man hiding his family and married to some unfamiliar woman. The headmaid sighed heavily and said that it was pie. Then the words were hidden by the author. That's right, Miranda said. Sometimes we cannot avoid certain circumstances. Everyone has their own reasons, Lila said. Understanding the situation of such a person is a waste of time. The Duchess mentally agreed, although she wanted to deny it. No, everything could just be a figment of her imagination, which is true. She can be sure that he has a son, which is not true. Lila wished the lady a pleasant tea party. Holding her head, our heroine thought why she so often thinks about that man, Bentley Winter. And they just have a fictitious marriage. How unexpectedly, a familiar and flattering voice suddenly said, when Mira came to him, that you were the first to want to see me. He put a wide smile on his face and smugly asked if he wanted to ask me out on a date. In response, the girl growled. Sorry, Wenner said. I understood everything last time, and I'm not going to repeat my mistakes. He enthusiastically said that he would continue to try to seduce her, and asked what kind of coffee she liked, what her personality type was. Miranda sighed heavily and said, I don't think you understand me. To which the moneylender replied that she interested him much more than expected. He really was not indifferent to the reasons for her worries and hesitations. What experiences was he talking about? The Duchess asked. The guy asked if he should try to guess so that she could be convinced of the sincerity of the words. In a tense and disturbing tone, he asked the girl, in the first note you were told to find out the Duke's secret, right? So you knew from the very beginning, Miranda said with a frown, and he explained that he had not read the note. It's just that the moneylender also received a similar order from a person who can't wait to find out this very secret. In the end, she got to the truth after many obstacles. Now all that remains is to convey the information. But you hesitate, yes? Venner asked. Miranda pursed her lips and frowned angrily at him and exhaled and said that he was right. The Duke's trust or his mother's box will have to be chosen, or she can ask him to be the only person who will reveal this secret. You can only choose one, he said, leaning his lower back and elbows on the back of the sofa, the tension growing. The next moment she still hesitated, squeezed her hands forcefully, and said, well, she handed the guy a folded note. You're giving away a secret, right? The cafe owner asked the Duchess with a sly grin. Great choice, Miranda, he said. The girl was serious, knowing exactly what to do next. Looking at the Duchess from behind and taking the note, he asked if he could read it. It's your business, the girl said, getting up from the sofa. From his facial expression when he opened the note, one could understand that he was surprised. Even the smile disappeared from his face. But the next moment he began to actorly read out, I found out something, but I can't tell about it in a note. We need to meet in person. You have a stolen box. I have information, Venner read, laughing. Incredibly, you offer a deal and ask if this means that she is not going to choose one side. No, Miranda said, rolling her eyes and again looking seriously at her interlocutor. She said that she would join both, not intending to become a puppet and betray the Duke. Irritably, she explained that she did not need his consultations, and in general, she asked, You were just parodying me, and what seemed to have happened? The guy asked joyfully. Wenner asked. Since when did she take his side? You two met not so long ago? Miranda had already approached the door by that time and put her hand on the handle. Exhaling, she said that when choosing between the Duke and him, obviously she would choose Bentley Winter. But the next moment, a stranger's hand was on her hand. Is everything okay? Asked a man who came up behind him. You don't know anything about him, certainly more than you do, said the Duchess. You know he won't take any more risks, the guy answered. There are a lot of rumors on the other side about other people's money from aristocrats and about Bentley Winter. What do you know? Mira asked, throwing back the guy's hand. Venner said that he could not give details, but because of him, not a single life was destroyed. Among the victims, there were good people who were not guilty of anything. But he couldn't tell more. Mira thought that he was the only one here on the other side. And she said that she was not naive enough to believe in it. Any facts without evidence are just rumors. How do you like this? He asked, smiling joyfully, and said that the Duke has a secret lover. The girl shuddered. And I thought that this idiot already knew everything, and the moneylender shrugged his shoulders and said that he was joking. But there is some truth in every joke. I'm telling you, you don't know a lot about your princess, he said, thoughtfully looking away to the side. She put her elbow on the door behind Mira and leaned over her and said that he didn't want the person he liked to be hurt. Miranda thought that he was just an idiot without knowledge, and looking at him from under her forehead, thanked him for the advice. But you yourself hurt me, the Duchess said, opening the door, but which he was leaning on, just past the note. And she is no longer Miss. Don't you dare call her that, she said menacingly, showing her ring finger with a ring, and asked to call her whatever you like. Lady Duchess, madam. And after Miranda had already left, he looked at the floor and smiled and said under his breath, she still hates me. Finally, having left the annoying person, she joyfully jumped up, rejoicing at the solution to one problem. She was sure that this thief was already on the hook. It was not in vain that she learned the secret of Bentley Winter. When meeting, pretend to give out information, but in reality, she will knock with all her might. The Duke's secret is no one's business. She will simply take her music box and run away. Suddenly, she heard a conversation between passing maids, which said that the Viscount had recently started a huge scandal. There was an illegitimate child. When the girl heard this, she closed her ears. She didn't want to hear it and didn't need to know about it. Never mind, she told herself. You trust Bentley Winter and won't give away his secret. She's not curious about who Beth's mother is. All this time, while the girl was squeezing her eyes and a voice was calling her ears and out, a worried Jennifer grabbed Miranda by the collar, lifting her into the air. Are you okay? The rabbit asked Madam excitedly, and seeing that she didn't understand her, she said about the stairs. The cat said that they met again, but she didn't think that she would save someone she hated. Who said that I hate you? She shouted and said, from now on I will try to treat you better. You are the Duke's wife. The husband's word was warm and so alluring that Mira repeated it and asked Jennifer if she could ask a question. Having received a positive answer, she asked if anyone was particularly close to the princess. The rabbit began to think. And the next moment, her husband's assistant, blushing embarrassedly, asked if she meant her. It can't be, Miranda said, turning away from her. Jennifer said that she was ignoring her feelings for the Duke. At the same time, Bentley was sitting in his office at his desk, writing something down and thinking. Miranda said that she had a reason. She broke the ban twice and found out his secret, although it is not clear whether she understood it. The man wondered if maybe it had something to do with the box, but why didn't Miranda consult him? And remembering the words of a friend, I thought what she was going to do with this information now, she would give it to someone. She needed to follow how there was a knock on the door. Sorry for disturbing you, Duke, said the maid. Mr. Wenner has come to see you. But before she could finish speaking, the guy entered on his own. He apologized for such a sudden disturbance during working hours, but the matter cannot be delayed. Duke Winter frowned and said menacingly that he did not invite him. It's a pity, he replied, smiling. I'll get to the point. In 2 days, there will be a banquet at the house of the Marquis Ronald. His presence with the Duchess is very desirable, he said, leaning on the table. Rising from the table, the Duke irritably said to convey that they would not be there. Venner asked if he knew the reason why he was here. And with a sly smile, he told the Duke that he would have to go out because they were expecting the appearance of a very important person. Who? Bentley asked. And at that very moment, Jennifer told Miranda that there was one such person outside the palace, a friend of the Duke. And so they announced in unison, although they were in different rooms and had different dialogues, that this was the first Empress, Isabella.